In my past life, I died on a rainy night while Gu Chen was celebrating his beloved's birthday. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at our wedding anniversary party. Gu Chen's beloved, Lin Weiwei, was pouring red wine over my head. Mrs. Gu, stop dreaming, you're just a stand-in one. As the cold rain, tainted with the scent of blood, flooded into my windpipe, I heard Lin Weiwei's sickly sweet, cooing voice coming from the other end of the phone call. Chen, the candle is about to go out. This was followed by Gu Chen's response, so gentle it felt unfamiliar. Coming, Weiwei. The dial tone severed my final, hoarse gasp for help. Gu Chen, it hurts, 1,000 times more than the pain of you not loving me. When I opened my eyes again, the glare from the crystal chandelier was blinding. The air was thick with the sickening warmth of champagne, perfume, and hollow pleasantries. Lin Weiwei, dressed in a pristine white haute couture gown, poured the liquid from her glass over my head before I could even react. Mrs. Gu. Lin Weiwei's voice was laced with mockery. Don't get the wrong idea, Chen just thought, the way you hang your head in silence, your silhouette bears a slight resemblance to mine. She leaned in and whispered, in a voice meant only for the two of us, just a cheap imitation keeping my seat warm. Did you really think you'd made it to the big leagues? I could even feel Gu Chen's gaze from the corner, detached, indifferent, as if it had nothing to do with him. I wiped the wine from my stinging eyes and slapped Lin Weiwei across the face at the same time. My eyes locked onto the glittering champagne tower on a waiter's tray a few steps away. Amidst the collective gasp and Gu Chen's suddenly darkened expression, I snatched up the heavy silver tray base too. Crash. The entire tray, along with all the champagne glasses on it, came crashing down on Lin Weiwei's head. The sharp crack of shattering glass mingled with Lin Weiwei's piercing shriek of a scream. Ah, my dress, my face, Su Nian, you're insane, Lin Weiwei screamed, trying to wipe the champagne from her face, only to cut her fingers on the broken glass. I let go, and the empty tray clattered onto the marble floor. Staring at Lin Weiwei before me, I forced a smile of utter coldness. Miss Lin, now we're alike, we're both in the same sorry state. Su Nian. A low growl, thick with suppressed fury, exploded behind me. A massive, bone-crushing force clamped down on my wrist. Gu Chen had somehow already rushed to stand before me. His usually handsome and aloof face was now a thundercloud of dark emotion. The sheer force of the pull sent me stumbling, nearly crashing into his arms. The familiar, sharp scent of sandalwood filled my nose, churning my stomach with a wave of even more intense nausea. The memory of him holding Lin Weiwei, whispering sweet nothings in a past life, superimposed itself over the image of his furious face now, tearing my mind apart. Gu Chen, you know that fire at your place 10 years ago, who did you think pulled you out of the ventilation duct? His body went rigid, and the grip on my wrist instinctively loosened for a moment. 3. It was me. I stared into his suddenly unfocused pupils, enunciating each word slowly and with absolute clarity. I was the one who dragged you back from the brink. His Adam's apple bobbed violently. I jerked my hand back so abruptly that Gu Chen, caught off guard, stumbled half a step backward. Mr. Gu, let's find a time to finalize the divorce. My voice regained its calm, even carrying a strange sense of relief. His breath seemed to catch for a moment. I didn't linger any longer. I just turned and walked away. I left it all behind me, Lin Weiwei's sobs, the guests' hushed whispers, and Gu Chen's heavy, almost tangible gaze. The moment I stepped through the banquet hall's heavy doors, a familiar, coppery tang of blood surged violently into my throat. I braced myself against the cold wall, seized by a fit of violent coughing. Uncurling the hand I'd used to cover my mouth, I saw a stark, spreading stain of blood in my palm. The late-stage stomach cancer diagnosis lay quietly in my bag, right next to the divorce papers I had already signed. The red marks on my wrist, left by Gu Chen's grip, still ached. To defeat them would require a more meticulous plan, for I'm going to tear off Lin Weiwei's carefully cultivated mask of innocence and sophistication right in front of everyone. Sitting by the massive floor-to-ceiling window in the study, I opened my laptop. The sound of typing was especially sharp in the quiet room. Fragments of memory, overlooked in my past life, flooded my mind. Did Lin Weiwei really get this far relying solely on Gu Chen? That balding, gold ring-laden director Wang was a key player in a past life. Lin Weiwei drunkenly boasted that the night she secured her position as the principal understudy for the international dance troupe, the deal was sealed on director Wang's yacht. Hey, look something up for me and send it over as soon as you can. There was a faint, almost imperceptible rasp in my voice. Well, to what do I owe the honor, Your Highness? Pigs must be flying. Su Yang's teasing, flippant tone came through the line. I ignored it and simply waited in silence. Su Yang, my former best friend, who cut ties with me after I insisted on marrying Gu Shen, alright, send it over, he replied, his tone casual. A few hours later I leaned back in my chair, watching the files on the screen archive themselves, slow and steady. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, but it was overshadowed by a cold, sharp thrill. And now, we wait for this poison blade to strike, with perfect precision, at what Lin Weiwei holds most dear. 5. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. 3 days later, at the City Arts Center, Lin Weiwei's first solo dance recital since returning home. Posters were everywhere, and the media played up her narrative of a phoenix-like rebirth and her persona as an artistic sprite as the primary sponsor. Gu Chen naturally occupied a front-row VIP seat, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses. I sat in the most inconspicuous corner at the back under the spotlight. Her every move was executed with flawless precision, drawing murmurs of awe and bursts of applause from the audience. How ironic. The lights came up for intermission, and a low hum of conversation filled the air. Excuse me, could I get by, please? I whispered something to the person next to me and headed for the restroom. The stall door locked with a click. In the dim light, my phone screen lit up. Sent. Anonymous tip-off materials have been delivered to the relevant department's inbox. My fingertips were ice cold. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. A few girls were touching up their makeup at the sinks. Vivi is in top form tonight. That fouette was absolutely stunning. Well, she's Mr. Gu's protege. How could she be anything less than brilliant? Shoo, keep your voice down. I lowered my head to wash my hands, the sound of running water drowning out their muffled laughter. The second half begins. Lin Weiwei was at the center of the stage, completing a breathtaking series of consecutive fouette turns. Bravo! An elderly gentleman nearby couldn't help but murmur his admiration just as the applause was about to erupt. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Several sharp, jarring phone notification tones rang out from different corners of the audience. What the hell? Someone in the front row muttered in annoyance. Oh my god, check your phones. A young girl covered her mouth in shock and thrust her screen towards her companion. What? Mr. Wang embezzled the funds for the poverty alleviation project, and these photos. That's not all. There's also that Lin Weiwei. Oh my god, the real name. Whistleblower report with all the attachments is posted. Who did this? Hello, what's going on? The group chat is blowing up. A man in the back row lowered his voice, urgently asking into his phone, his eyes glued to the screen. Fatty Wang got doxed, and there's dirt on Lin Weiwei. Send it to me, quick. The hushed whispers instantly erupted into an uncontrollable commotion, bubbling through the audience like boiling water. Quiet, please be quiet, a staff member whispered urgently. What? Are you all incompetent? How did that information get leaked? In the front VIP section, Mr. Wang abruptly stood up, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh screech. His face was a terrifying shade of ashen gray, the phone screen still glowing in his white-knuckled grip. Mr. Wang, Mr. Wang, the second half has just started. What are you? A middle-aged man wearing a work ID badge hurried forward to intervene. Get out of my way. He shoved the staff member aside roughly and stormed towards the exit without a backward glance. Out of my way, everyone, move on stage. Lin Weiwei's final pirouette was visibly unsteady, her toe slipped, causing her to stumble half a step before she barely managed to regain her balance. Her signature sweet smile froze completely on her face, her eyes darting towards the audience in panic and terror. From the direction of the backstage, a tearful, accusatory voice could faintly be heard. What happened? Who did this? Where's my phone? I pulled my cap down lower and moved with the silent, yet tense and shifting crowd toward the exit, passing by the entrance to a corridor. I happened to hear Gu Chen's voice coming from a half-open door. Find out the source immediately. Contain the story. Too late. Wang Dehai has already been taken away. Useless. Keep Lin Weiwei calm for now. Make sure she doesn't say anything reckless. 6. Just as I reached the entrance, I was blocked by a surging crowd and the blinding glare of camera flashes. Reporters swarmed the scene, blocking the theater's VIP exit. Miss Lin, is it true? The online rumors about your improper financial dealings and transactional relationship with Chairman Wang. Vivi, there are allegations that you secured your position in the international dance troupe through improper means. How do you respond, Mr. Gu? As Miss Lin's close friend and primary patron, were you aware of this situation? Surrounded by a frantic scrum of assistants and bodyguards, Lin Weiwei made a desperate and disheveled dash for her van. In the chaos, a jostling reporter's microphone jabbed her hard in the forehead, making her cry out in pain. Just then, Gu Chen's car pulled up nearby. His bodyguards fought to push the reporters back and opened the car door for him. Lin Weiwei threw herself forward as if clutching a Lifeline, her scream choked with sobs. Achin, save me, they're slandering me, it's all lies, it's that bitch Sun Yan who set me up. Gu Chen's movements froze. Lin Weiwei felt a chill run through her under his gaze, her forward lurch halting mid-motion. I stood in the clamorous shadows across the street, quietly watching the farce unfold. 7. In the end, Gu Chen did not let Lin Weiwei into his car. He gave his bodyguard a low-voiced order, the door closed, and the black luxury car drove off with cold indifference. Lin Weiwei was left alone, her face as pale as paper amidst the journalists' increasingly frenzied siege and interrogation. Good, the seed of suspicion in Gu Chen's heart had already begun to sprout. I turned and prepared to leave the clamor behind. I had only taken a few steps when a black Bentley glided silently to a stop beside me. The car window rolled down, revealing Gu Chen's impassive profile. Get in. His voice was low, yet it carried an undeniable command. My steps faltered. Without looking at him, I fixed my gaze on the distant, neon-lit billboard. Mr. Gu, why aren't you concerned about your Weiwei? She needs you right now. Sun Yan. He turned his head, his gaze heavy and fixed on me. Was it you who did all that? His tone wasn't accusatory, it felt more like a confirmation. I slowly took off my sunglasses, meeting his scrutinizing gaze. You flatter me, Mr. Gu. I let out a soft chuckle, the sound cutting clearly through the night breeze. I just lifted a corner of the filth that others wanted to keep hidden. What, is your perfect goddess allowed to dance on a cloud, but no one else is allowed to see the mud on her feet? His jaw tightened, his gaze sharp as a blade. You hate her, so you resort to such underhanded tactics. Despicable. 8. Compared to her, who deliberately arranged that fatal car crash knowing I was dying of stomach cancer. Gu Chen, tell me, who's the real scumbag? That final sentence hung between us like a thunderclap. A car accident, stomach cancer. He repeated the words instinctively, his voice parched. Don't worry if you don't know, you'll find out soon enough. Without another glance at his suddenly pale face, I turned and prepared to leave. Lin Weiwei, this is just the beginning. Seeing that I was about to leave, Gu Chen immediately got out of the car to stop me. Was it you who saved me back then? Gu Chen's voice was hoarse, like a rusted, blunt knife. Does it matter? I shook off his hand and said, my voice icy, it's a bit late for that realization now, Mr. Gu. I paused deliberately, letting my gaze sweep over his pale, bloodless face. After all, your precious Weiwei is waiting for you to save her. Her precious reputation is worth far more than my life. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him with that look of utter devastation on his face. 9. I turned on the computer, the screen's cold blue glow washing over my face. I clicked open the encrypted folder. Inside, a few files lay quietly waiting. Zhouya, Gu Chen's elegant stepmother, had meticulously concealed a secret for decades. Born in the slums, she clawed her way into high society through cosmetic surgery and a forged academic record. She later became the mistress of Gu Chen's father, Gu Hong, and ultimately succeeded in marrying him. She exploited the resources of the Gu group to embezzle assets for her good-for-nothing brother, a sum so vast it could land her in prison for life. The real kicker is that Lin Weiwei is actually the child she gave birth to. During her time as a mistress, almost no one knew about this. One anonymous tip after another, along with photographs, was sent out. By the time it was done, the first light of dawn was breaking. I leaned back in my chair and closed my dry, tired eyes. Deep within, that familiar, dull ache began to throb once more. This pain was a constant reminder that my time was limited. 10. My phone buzzed abruptly on the desk, its screen lighting up with Gu Chen's number. I didn't answer, letting it ring until it went to voicemail. Immediately after, a text message popped up. Just 4 words. Was it you? I gave a wry smile, silenced my phone, and placed it face down on the desk. Gu Chen, the bitter taste of betrayal by lies is only just beginning. 3 days later, the Gu Group's most important annual charity gala. The venue was chosen to be the most luxurious lakeside estate owned by the Gu family. 11. Lin Weiwei didn't show up. It seems the recent incident has kept her out of the public eye for the time being. Ignoring all the stares, I picked up a glass of champagne and made my way to a corner of the banquet hall. The dinner proceeded according to schedule. Gu Chen took the stage to deliver a speech on behalf of the group. His voice was steady, his demeanor as composed as ever, yet upon closer inspection, a lingering weariness and gloom were etched between his brows. Zhouya followed closely behind, speaking on behalf of the Gu Family Charitable Foundation. In a gentle tone, she recounted the foundation's many acts of benevolence. The very moment Zhouya finished speaking, a jarring burst of static suddenly screeched from the massive surround sound speakers lining the banquet hall. Everyone was stunned. Immediately after, a cold, mechanical male voice, digitally altered, cut clearly through all other noise. echoing throughout the entire banquet hall. Mrs. Gu, Madame Zhouya, you stand on that stage preaching about charity and virtue. Do you even remember your real name is Zhou Tsuehua? Do you remember the dilapidated tenement building in Chunfeng Alley where you were born? Shall I refresh everyone's memory with a photo of you before the plastic surgery? The entire hall fell deathly silent. You could hear a pin drop. The smile on Zhouya's face instantly froze. She stood frozen in place, her body beginning to tremble uncontrollably. The massive projection screen, which had been playing the Gu Corporation's promotional video, suddenly flashed. A high-definition, aged household registration document photo was enlarged. Name, Zhou Tsuehua. Place of origin, no, XX. Chunfeng Lane, XX City. Next to it was a photo of her in her youth, wearing a cheap floral blouse and sporting a rather dowdy braid, a far cry from the bejeweled, sophisticated lady she was now. Gasp! Some of the ladies in the audience couldn't suppress sharp gasps, their eyes alight with a mix of disdain and voyeuristic glee. No, it's fake, that's a lie, turn it off now. Zhouya finally snapped back to reality. Letting out a frantic, undignified scream, she lunged toward the control console, only to be instinctively blocked by the host standing beside her. The cold, electronic voice continued without pause, broadcasting even more damning content. Your actions in laundering money and transferring assets for your brother, Mr. Zhou Qiang, the illegal operations you conducted using the Gu Family Charity Foundation as a cover, have also been substantiated by detailed tip-off materials. Your meticulously crafted persona as a high society lady is nothing but a facade built on lies and dirty money. On the screen, meticulously selected evidence scrolled rapidly in sync with the narration. A soft thud echoed. It was Zhouya. Her strength finally gave out, her legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the polished stage floor. Her carefully styled hair tumbled loose, the expensive champagne-colored gown was crumpled into a heap, now smudged with dust. 12. The audience below erupted into chaos. Camera flashes went off like mad, relentlessly capturing the disheveled and despondent Zhouya. On stage, a tidal wave of gasps, murmurs, and scornful snickers washed over the scene. The high society ladies and socialites who once called her sister and showered her with flattery now, they one by one shied away, their faces etched with disgust and a cold, urgent desire to distance themselves. Guchen stood below the stage, his face ashen. His gaze was locked on his stepmother's breakdown on stage before it snapped violently toward me in the crowd. His eyes churned with a tempest of fury and the humiliation of having been played. He knew exactly who was pulling the strings behind it all. I met his gaze, and across the clamor and chaos, across the sea of blood and enmity, I raised my champagne glass in a distant toast. The liquid refracted a cold, glittering light under the brilliant chandeliers. I did not drink. Instead, I curled my lips into an excruciatingly slow, utterly malicious smile directed at him, a silent declaration of war. Gu Chen's gaze suddenly turned even more terrifying. He shoved the person blocking his way aside and charged towards me with long, swift strides. A terrifying, oppressive aura radiated from his entire being, as if he wanted to devour me whole. Just then, the banquet hall doors were flung open. Several figures in dark uniforms, their expressions grave, entered the room. The one at the front held up his identification, his voice booming and cutting through the chaos of the scene. Ms. Zhouya, we are from the Municipal Tax Bureau's Inspection Division and the Economic Crime Investigation Unit. You are suspected of large-scale tax evasion and illegal asset transfer. Please come with us to assist in the investigation. Hearing this, Zhouya, who had gone limp on the stage, rolled her eyes back and lost consciousness completely. The scene descended into utter chaos. Reporters swarmed in a frenzy, guests scrambled for cover, and security was completely overwhelmed. Gu Chen's charge toward me was brutally cut off by the surging crowd and the pandemonium. I stood my ground, watching the farce I had orchestrated with a cold, detached gaze. I watched Zhouya being carried away like a sack of trash, and I saw the look of frantic, helpless fury on Gu Chen's face amidst the chaos. I gently set the champagne flute down on the long table, the crystal giving a soft, clear clink. Zhouya, your dream of marrying into wealth is over. Your precious daughter, Lin Weiwei, is next. 13. Gu Chen ultimately failed to break through the chaotic wall of people. He was forcibly shielded by his assistant and bodyguards who had rushed over upon hearing the commotion. His face was so dark it seemed to drip with malice, his gaze fixed intently on me. The cool night breeze outside brushed against my face, slightly calming the bloody turmoil churning in my chest. The phone buzzed once in the bag, an encrypted message. The target has arrived at Emerald Bay Sanatorium. Emerald Bay, the city's most exclusive private sanatorium. It was also the refuge where Gu Chen had urgently placed Lin Weiwei after the yacht scandal. It seems Gu Chen had grown suspicious of Lin Weiwei, but for the sake of our long-standing relationship, I offered her a final refuge, I sneered. Back at the apartment, I immediately contacted a top-tier private investigation team. Keep a close watch on Emerald Bay, especially on anyone entering or leaving Lin Weiwei's hospital room. Pay particular attention to a caregiver named Zhongli. Zhongli was a mole Zhou Ye had planted by Lin Weiwei's side for years in her past life. Many of Zhou Ye's shady orders were relayed through this seemingly ordinary caregiver. Now that Zhou Ye is in hot water herself, what will her loyal lapdog do? I can't wait to find out. Sure enough, in less than 24 hours, the latest surveillance footage came through the corridor in the VIP wing of the sanatorium late at night. A woman in a nurse's uniform and a face mask slipped furtively into Lin Weiwei's hospital room. A few minutes later, she emerged, now holding a small USB drive. The private detective immediately sent the obtained footage and evidence anonymously to all the major media outlets. News broke quickly. Lin Weiwei was dismissed from the dance troupe for allegedly abusing her position for improper dealings, damaging the troupe's reputation. Her talent agency also announced the termination of her contract. Simultaneously, some media outlets released leaked, authentic footage of her involvement in the yacht incident. In the video, Lin Weiwei is seen assisting Mr. Wang into a room. The release of this footage instantly sparked intense debate among netizens. 14 Gu Chen's reaction was even faster than anticipated. Late that night, after receiving the latest evidence, a fierce argument erupted in Lin Weiwei's VIP hospital room. Through the remote listening device planted by the detective, Gu Chen's roars and Lin Weiwei's hysterical screams came through clearly. Lies, all lies. Sun Yan fabricated them. Chen, believe me, Mom is talking nonsense. She's gone mad. She's only saying that to save herself, by dragging you into murder with her. That's saving herself. Then came the sound of Gu Chen's voice, gritted through clenched teeth. Lin Weiwei, look at me. Was it really you who saved me back then? That fragment of the school badge, did you leave it there? I tell me, so what if I did it? Lin Weiwei's voice suddenly rose to a shrill pitch, filled with a desperate, self-destructive madness. What's so great about that bitch Sun Yan? What makes her worthy of you? Why should she? My mother was right. She deserves to die. She should have died a long time ago. Smack! A sharp slap cut through her screams. This was followed by the dull thud of a heavy impact against the wall and Lin Weiwei's agonized shriek. From the listening device came the chaotic sound of shattering objects and Lin Weiwei's increasingly desperate, piercing cries for mercy. Gu Chen had clearly lost all control. Mr. Gu, calm down, Miss Lin. It seemed to be the voice of a bodyguard trying to intervene. Gu Chen's voice was like a thunderclap. Inform the hospital that from now on, the Gu family will not pay a single cent for her. Let her fend for herself. The surveillance signal cut off after a burst of harsh static. Early the next morning, an even more explosive piece of news rocketed to the top of the trending charts. Ballet goddess Lin Weiwei abandoned by sugar daddy, forcibly evicted from luxury sanatorium in the dead of night. 15 It shattered Zhou Ye's dignity and ruined Lin Weiwei. What remained was the mastermind behind this tragedy, and the core of my past life's misfortune, Gu Chen. A barrage of negative news caused the stock price of the Gu Group to plummet for days on end, fueling growing discontent among the shareholders. The Gu Group's greatest vulnerability was also the project into which Gu Chen had poured his heart and soul, the one on which he pinned his highest hopes. It was the Qinzhou Super Complex, located in the city's new core district. In my past life, I knew all the core data of this project, and more importantly, I knew exactly where its weaknesses lay. Through multiple legitimate fund and brokerage accounts, I initiated a precise short-selling operation. A tidal wave of capital surged through the market, silently eroding the Gu family's credit. Meanwhile, I reached out to Gu Chen's greatest business rival, Shen Ku, the ambitious and ruthless young master of the Hongyuan Group. At the top floor of Shen Ku's private club, Miss Su, you never cease to amaze me. Shen Ku's sharp eyes scrutinized me, with undisguised admiration and a hint of curiosity. How does it feel to personally push your ex-husband over the edge? You flatter me, President Shen. I took a sip of water, a dull ache throbbing intermittently in my stomach. It's simply a matter of mutual benefit. I provide the opportunity to bring down Gu Chen and the critical vulnerability of the sinking ship project, and you provide the capital and platform to devour the Gu Group and expand Hongyuan. Straight to the point. Shen Ku set down his glass and leaned forward slightly. I'm curious, Miss Su, what is it you want in return? The scraps left after the Gu family's collapse, or Chen himself. I met his probing gaze, my eyes calm and unreadable. I want the Gu family empire to change hands completely, for Chen to be utterly disgraced and left with nothing. As for the man himself, a cold, sharp smile curved my lips. I want him to live, to consciously feel everything he has lost. That is my repayment. Shen Ke stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly laughed, a spark of excitement at meeting a worthy opponent in his eyes. Deal: a financial strangulation targeting the Gu clan's sink the ship project. It was launched stealthily while Chen was overwhelmed by the family scandal and internal turmoil within the conglomerate. 3 days later, at the headquarters of the Gu Group, the atmosphere in the top-floor chairman's office was as oppressive as the dead. Calm before a storm, Chen stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, dark clouds gathered, mirroring the turmoil in his heart. The secretary pushed the door open cautiously, her face pale. Mr. Gu, Hongyuan Group. Hongyuan has just sent over a formal acquisition offer. It's for 51% controlling stake in the sinking ship project. Chen whirled around sharply, his gaze as sharp as a blade. Shen Ke, where did he get the nerve? And the capital, Mr. Gu? The secretary's voice trembled. Our stock price hit the lower limit again at today's opening. The bank has rejected our emergency loan application, citing excessive risk, and what's more, the secretary swallowed hard. Hongyuan has allied with several overseas capital firms. They've already secretly acquired over 15% of our outstanding shares. Combined with this surprise attack on sinking ship, we might get out. Chen let out a low, guttural roar, his voice hoarse and broken. The secretary, as if granted a pardon, hastily retreated from the room. Only the heavy sound of Chen's breathing remained in the office. He walked to the expansive desk and slumped into the chair, burying his hands in his thick, dark hair. His mother's imprisonment, Lin Weiwei's lies and malice, the corporation teetering on the brink of collapse, and Sun Yan, the one he had personally pushed away. At that very moment, the office door was pushed open again without warning. The sharp click of high heels striking the floor shattered the deathly silence. Chen's head snapped up. I stood at the door, my face a mask of indifference. Shen Ke stood half a step behind me, wearing a victor's smile. Mr. Gu, my voice was utterly calm, without a single ripple of emotion. Mr. Shen, representing the new controlling shareholder, is here to take over the sinking ship project and convene an emergency board meeting. Furthermore, in my capacity as a special advisor to Hongyuan Group, I am formally notifying you that, due to the significant reputational damage and poor decision-making you have recently caused the group, the board will propose your removal as chairman. Shen Ke seized the moment to hand over the chilling document, placing it on the desk before Chen. Chen's gaze was fixed intently on my face, his expression inscrutably complex. Sun Yan, his voice was hoarse, grating like sandpaper. Do you have to do this? I didn't answer him. Instead, I turned slightly, my gaze drifting out the window toward the direction of the Qinzhou construction site. Mr. Gu, I withdrew my gaze and looked at him. Do you understand now? Love will betray you, conscience can blind you, but money and power won't. They are loyal only to the victor. I raised my hand and pointed to the chairman's seat behind him, a symbol of power and status. Now, please leave my seat. 17. Shen Ke carried himself with the composure of a victor. At the Gu Group board meeting, when the official announcement was made to take over the Shenzhou project and remove Chen from his position as chairman, I quietly left the building. The last look Chen gave me stirred but a faint ripple before swiftly sinking into the deeper currents of weariness and illness. He had lost everything. Everything he had was crumbling apart in my hands. This must have been the very side I longed to see most as I drew my last breath on that rainy night in my past life. Yet why does my heart feel so hollow, not filled with the fire of vengeance? Instead, it hisses in the cold wind, seeping with an even deeper chill. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a message from Shen Ke. The dust has settled. Consultant Su, a celebration. I declined. Both body and soul are crying out for silence. I still need to confirm one last thing. The news came quickly. The target has been placed under investigation by relevant authorities on suspicion of commercial bribery and embezzlement of the dance troupe's assets, and is subject to an exit ban. Currently in custody. The photos never arrived, not needed anymore. Those names and endings that once could stir a tempest in my heart now yield nothing but a hollow, silent void. Like a stone dropped into a deep pool, Not even a ripple cares to rise. Returning to that empty penthouse, a suffocating silence rushed to meet me. The cramps in my stomach tightened wave after wave, the metallic taste of blood at the back of my throat nearly impossible to suppress. I walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window in the study and gazed at the view outside. This place was once my cage as Mrs. Goop. The doorbell rang out abruptly in the deathly silence once, then again, with a near-obsessive persistence. I didn't move. Only he would ring the bell like that. The person outside seemed to lose patience. The faint sound of a key turning in the lock followed. He still has a key to this place, of course. Legally, this house is still considered joint marital property. The door swung open. 18 Guchen stood in the doorway. In just a few days, he looked completely drained of all vitality. He gazed at me with profound intensity. Sun Yen. His voice was terribly hoarse, like sandpaper grating against his throat. Wei Wei, where is she? I turned slowly to face him. Does it matter? My voice was flat and devoid of any emotion. Isn't it a little too late for you to start showing concern for your Vivi now, Mr. Gu? He stumbled forward a step, his body swaying slightly. Tell me, Sun Yen, I know it's you. Where did you take her? His voice suddenly rose, trembling with a loss of control. Where did you take her? I repeated softly, the corner of my lips curling into a faint, icy arc. Probably, to the place she deserves, a place worthy of her scheming mind and filthy hands, just like your stepmother, Zhouya, going to the prison she deserves. You. Gu Chen's breathing suddenly turned ragged, veins bulged at his temples, and his fists clenched so tight it seemed he would lunge forward any second. Why? He growled, his voice ragged and broken. Why go this far? Destroying the Gu family, destroying me, isn't that enough? What about Wei Wei? It's not enough. I cut him off sharply. Of course it's not enough, Gu Chen. You're asking me why? I looked him straight in the eye. Because Lin Weiwei deserved to die. That's the truth. My voice was unnervingly calm. She wanted me dead, and she succeeded. My gaze locked onto him. Gu Chen, I'm dead. I died in the rain that night, beneath the wheels. My tone was flat, as if I were talking about someone else. It was the moment you hung up on my call for help to light a candle for Lin Weiwei. That makes you a murderer too, and now you ask me why. What gives you the right? The corner of my mouth twitched, devoid of any mirth. The information detonated in Gu Chen's mind like a bomb. He stumbled backward, his spine slamming against the door with a dull thud. Cancer, the car crash, me, the phone call, the rainy night, the birthday celebration. No, it can't be. He shook his head. You're here now. He stared at me intently, as if trying to confirm something. Why am I still alive? I'll finish it for him. Yes, I'd like to know too. Why did fate grant me a second life? Perhaps it was precisely so I could witness, with my own eyes, how each and every one of you would fall from grace into hell, and pay the most agonizing price for what you've done. The violent surge of emotion finally detonated the bomb that had been ticking inside me all along. A violent, racking cough seized me. I could no longer hold myself up, doubling over and clamping a hand tightly over my mouth. Warm, foul-smelling liquid forced its way through my fingers, dripping steadily onto the floor. A shocking, vivid crimson, stark under the harsh, pale light. 19 Yen. Gu Chen's pupils contracted sharply. He practically lunged forward, trying to catch me. Don't touch me. I mustered every ounce of strength to wrench my hand free from his grasp. My body, drained of all energy, staggered backward and slammed into the icy cold floor-to-ceiling window. I lifted my head, blood still smeared the corner of my mouth. My face was deathly pale, yet my eyes burned with an unsettling intensity. Gu Chen, look at my blood, I gasped. My voice faint, yet every word was enunciated with perfect clarity. So this is the thanks I get, your indulgence, Lin Weiwei's malice, Zhouya's schemes. You pushed me to this point, bit by bit. Are you satisfied now? No. Gu Chen stared at the shocking pool of blood on the floor, then at my deathly pale face. An immense tide of fear and remorse, cold as the sea, crashed over him and dragged him under. His knees buckled, and he fell heavily onto the icy floor. He looked up, his face streaked with tears. Nyan, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He was sobbing uncontrollably, his voice broken and ragged. I was blind. I was a fool. I'm the one who got you hurt. I'm sorry. Please, don't die. Don't leave. He reached out a trembling hand, wanting to touch me, but didn't dare. Seeing him in this unprecedented state of utter disarray, all the grievances, resentments, and despair from this life and the last surged over me like a tidal wave, only to recede the next second, leaving behind nothing but boundless exhaustion. Affection that comes too late is cheaper than dirt. Leaning against the cold glass for support, I steadied my faltering body and slowly straightened up. Gu Chen, my voice was terrifyingly calm. Your apology, your tears, your kneeling, They mean nothing to me. He jerked his head up, and through the blur of tears, only deeper despair remained in his eyes. I pointed at the glaring pool of blood on the ground, then tapped the spot over my own heart. And this place, this hollowed out part, it can never be filled again. Watching the color drain from his face in an instant, I continued, speaking the cruelest words in the calmest tone. This is your just deserts. As for my life, I gave a light cough, swallowing the metallic taste of blood rising in my throat. Whether fate claims me, and how, is my business, but it will absolutely have nothing more to do with you. No. Guchen let out a desperate roar. Without another glance in his direction, I walked straight past him. I headed for the door and pulled open its heavy weight. Beyond the door lay an empty corridor, an unknown fate, and my own final battlefield. 20. The elevator doors at the end of the corridor slid open without a sound. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the underground garage. The elevator descended, bringing a slight sensation of weightlessness. A violent pain surged in my gut once more, the metallic taste of blood in my throat nearly impossible to suppress. I leaned against the cold wall of the elevator car and slowly closed my eyes. Guchen, Lin Weiwei, Zhouye, your debts have been settled. By my own hand. An understated black sedan glided silently to a stop in front of me. It was Shenke. The best hospital in City A has been contacted, and the specialist consultation can begin at any time. He was brief, his gaze sweeping over my pallid face. Are you sure you want to leave now? Don't you want to stay a little longer? What are you looking at? I pulled the car door open and got in, my movements slow and sluggish from exhaustion. To see the ruins of the Gu Empire's complete collapse, or to watch Guchen struggle like a stray dog with nowhere to go. I leaned back against the cool leather seat, closed my eyes, and my voice was heavy with weariness. It's over, Mr. Shen, as we agreed. The future proceeds from the sunken ship project, my share, all of it, is to be transferred into the Nianan Fund. Shenke fell silent for a moment, then started the car. Is it worth it, Sun Yan? Spending your final days to secure a future, one you may never even see. He was referring to the fund named after my mother, which is dedicated to supporting children with cancer from impoverished families. It's still better than wasting it on pointless hatred. I gazed out the window at the streets speeding past. At least those children still have a future. There's still a chance. Unlike me, a violent cough seized me without warning, and this time I could no longer hold it back. A warm, thick, and pungent liquid gushed from my mouth, staining my palm crimson. Sun Yan. Shenke's voice was uncharacteristically panicked as he jerked the steering wheel and pulled over. I waved a hand, gasping for air as my vision began to blur. To the hospital, hurry. I managed to gasp out a few words. 21. The best hospital in City A, with spacious and bright wards. Guchen wasn't here, neither were Lin Weiwei nor Zhouye. Only the smell of antiseptic and the rhythmic beeping of monitors. Time moves slowly here. Pain is the constant backdrop. The brief, numbing respite from painkillers becomes a precious gasp for air. I drift in and out of consciousness, asleep most of the time. In my rare moments of clarity, I receive briefings from Shenke. The Gu Group has completed its bankruptcy liquidation, with the Qinzhou project successfully acquired by Hong Yuan. Zhouye was sentenced to 25 years in prison in the first trial, convicted on multiple charges including tax evasion, money laundering, and fraud. Guchen sold off all his personal assets to repay debts and is currently missing. Final entry, Lin Weiwei was sentenced for commercial bribery and embezzlement of dance troupe funds, resulting in a lifetime ban from the arts industry. Reading these messages now, it feels as if the person who went through it all wasn't me. Late one night, a sharp pain tore me from my stupor. My mind was unnervingly clear, yet my body felt impossibly heavy. At that very moment, the door to the hospital room was pushed open. Just a crack. A tall figure, almost melting into the shadows of the doorway. Guchen had actually found this place. I didn't call out or move, I just watched him quietly, as if he were a stranger who had nothing to do with me. He shuffled in step by step, his footsteps heavy and unsteady. He looked at my hand with the 4-line, and at my face, pale and almost translucent beneath the oxygen mask. Nian, Nian Nian, he spoke, his voice thick with tears and laced with cautious hesitation. I'm too late. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, it's all my fault, I was blind, I did this to you, please, don't die, don't leave me. He repeated the words incoherently, tears streaming down and splashing onto the floor. I watched this scene, a dead, hollow calm settling in my heart. No hatred, no satisfaction. His tears, his remorse, his abject humility, they all came far, far too late. My vision began to blur, my consciousness ebbing away like the tide. Gu Chen, with the last of my strength, my voice came out. Muffled and indistinct through the oxygen mask, the man kneeling on the ground jerked his head up. "Get out," I forced out the final word, with difficulty and clarity. His gaze was icy and hollow, devoid of any emotion. The light in Gu Chen's eyes went out in an instant. My gaze passed over his crumbling form, consciousness sank into a warm darkness, and my body felt as if it were becoming very, very light. Finally, it was over. 22. 1 month later, in the solemn lawyer's office, Shen Ke sat expressionlessly behind the expansive desk. Across from him sat a gaunt man with hollow eyes. According to the will and notarized documents signed by Ms. Sun Yan before her passing, all her assets, totaling approximately 178 billion RMB, are to be unconditionally donated to the Nyenan Charity Foundation. The funds are designated to support the treatment and research for impoverished children with cancer in China. The lawyer's voice was calm and clear. Gu Chen's body swayed almost imperceptibly. 178 billion, she would rather give it all away to those children she never even knew then. Leave a single cent that would connect her to him in any way. Furthermore, the lawyer slid a document across the table. This is the deed of transfer for the only property under Ms. Sun Yan's name, a penthouse apartment in City A. She designated it as a gift to you. But the deed comes with one condition. The lawyer's voice remained steady. You must sign this permanent waiver, confirming the relinquishment of all claims to Ms. Sun Yan's estate, and any nominal rights of identity associated with her. Upon signing, the property rights will take effect immediately. Gu Chen's gaze fell upon the signature at the end of the document. His hand trembled as he picked up the pen, its tip hovering over the signature line. Unable to descend, the lawyer waited in silence, offering no. Time ticked by. Second by second. Finally, a scalding tear fell onto the pristine white page, quickly blooming into a small, damp stain. Gu Chen finally signed his name. The lawyer collected the documents and, in a businesslike manner, handed him the keys to the apartment and an unsealed letter. This was left for you along with the will. Phoenix Hill Cemetery in the suburbs of City A. A starkly simple black marble headstone, bearing only 2 words, Sun Yan. Before the headstone lay a fresh bouquet of white lilies of the valley, still beaded with morning dew. Beside the bouquet, an opened envelope lay quietly. The wind lifted a corner of the letter, revealing a few lines of familiar handwriting, elegant, yet with a sharp edge. Gu Chen, keep the key safe. That was the cage that trapped me for half my life. Now, it belongs to you. Take a good, long look at that floor-to-ceiling window just as I did, day after day. Watching your retreating figure, you can savor this bitterness. Slowly. Don't bother mourning me. I'd find it distasteful. Sun Yan's final words. The end. Story 2. The first words Fu Qinzhou uttered upon waking from surgery were, "Tell Sun Yan, divorce." Everyone expected me to weep and cling, to make a scene. After all, I had loved him for a full 10 years. I signed the papers quietly, leaving behind my wedding ring and a positive pregnancy test. That night, on a flight bound for a foreign country, I stared out the window into the pitch-black void. 3 years later, during a live-streamed family reality show, a top-tier celebrity baby called out "Daddy" to the camera, just as Fu Qinzhou barged into the live stream like a madman. Our son blinked his eyes, identical replicas of his father's, and said, "Mommy, this uncle looks like the daddy I cried for by mistake." The steady, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room, cold, mechanical, setting the tone for this VIP suite saturated with the scent of antiseptic and the sterile gleam of metallic surfaces. Fu Qinzhou's thick lashes fluttered several times, struggling against a murky darkness before finally, with great effort, lifting open. His vision was blurry at first, then gradually sharpened, focusing on the harsh, cold white fluorescent light on the ceiling. "Qinzhou, you're awake." Mrs. Fu, who had been keeping vigil by the bedside, shot to her feet. Her voice was hoarse from emotion and days of exhaustion as she urgently pressed the call button. The family's old friend, an uncle who had been dozing on the nearby sofa, jolted awake and hurried over. "Doctor, quick, Qinzhou is awake." After a flurry of hurried footsteps, the attending physician, accompanied by a nurse, swiftly checked his vitals, letting out a sigh of relief. The doctor smiled at Mrs. Fu and said, "You can rest easy, madam. Mr. Fu is out of the woods." It's truly a miracle. A wave of relief washed over everyone, their faces alight with the joy of a precious life reclaimed. The car accident had struck with devastating suddenness, nearly shattering half of the Fu family's business empire and draining the life from Mrs. Fu. Fu Qinzhou's Adam's apple bobbed, his parched lips parted, and from beneath the oxygen mask came a faint, rasping whisper of sound. Mrs. Fu immediately leaned in, bringing her ear close. "Chinjo, what is it?" "I'm listening, my son, take your time." He drew a breath, gathering the faint strength that had just returned, each word scraped out like sandpaper against his throat, clear and cruel, shattering the room's fragile relief. "Tell, Sun Yen, divorce." A sudden, deathly silence fell over the hospital room. The joy on Mrs. Fu's face froze. She slowly straightened up, her gaze fixed on her son's pale yet resolute profile, her eyes a tangle of unreadable emotions. The old family friend standing beside them cleared his throat awkwardly and looked away. No one was surprised, and no one even tried to talk him out of it, as if his demand upon waking was the most natural thing in the world. After all, the whole city knew that the one who truly occupied the heart of the Fu family heir, Fu Qinzhou, was his white moonlight, Lin Weiwei, the ballerina who had left for overseas 3 years ago, not his current wife, Sun Yen, who had kept a gaunt, sleepless vigil outside his hospital room during his coma after the accident, only to be politely asked by the Fu family to go home and rest once he was out of danger. The news reached the lakeside villa just as Sun Yen was holding a bowl of chicken congee that had cooled to the perfect temperature. Her phone slipped from her fingers and hit the polished marble floor with a sharp crack. The screen shattered, spreading out like a heart suddenly fractured. The housemaid, Zhang Ma, looked at her with concern. "Madam." Sun Yen stood there, stunned, for a few seconds. Then, she slowly crouched down and began picking up the pieces, one by one. The sharp glass shards cut her fingertips, drawing beads of blood, but she seemed completely unaware. "Madam, your hand," exclaimed Nanny Zhang as she rushed to fetch the first aid kit, yet she lifted her head, her face devoid of any expression. There was no expected breakdown of tears, not even a ripple of emotion. She only asked softly, "Nanny Zhang, he's completely out of danger, right?" Holding the iodine swab, Nanny Zhang looked at her like this, her heart aching as she nodded repeatedly. "The master is awake, he's fine, it's wonderful, but what about the divorce?" Sun Yen cut her off, taking the swab herself. She dabbed her finger carelessly, and a bead of blood instantly stained the cotton red. "It's good that he's awake." She stood up, her calmness unnerving. "Nanny Zhang, please help me pack my things. Just the essentials will do." She turned and walked upstairs, her back so frail it looked like a sheet of paper, ready to crumple at the slightest breeze. In the study drawer lay the divorce papers, long since drafted and awaiting only his signature. Her gaze fell upon her own name, already signed at the bottom, Sun Yen, a decade of love, distilled into the 14 simple strokes of her signature. She slid the wedding band from her ring finger. The cold platinum circle, once warmed against her heart until it burned, now felt only chill against her skin. She placed it gently upon the papers. Then, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "Pregnancy, 6 weeks plus." The date of the exam was the day before his accident. Back then, holding that slip of paper, she was so overjoyed her fingertips trembled. She wondered how to tell him, imagining he might be surprised, and then perhaps feel a flicker of happiness, even if it was only because of the child, and not because of her. Not anymore. She folded the pregnancy test result in half, then in half again, until it became a neat, square little packet, which she then placed beneath the ring. It was like burying every last shred of hope that had never seen the light of day. Mrs. Fu swiftly sent over the agreement, signed by Fu Qinzhou, along with some compensation, a jaw-droppingly large check and the keys to several properties. The efficiency was staggering, as if they feared that even a second's delay might give her a chance to change her mind and cling to the Fu family once more. Sun Yen kept only the agreement, returning everything else exactly as it was. That night, an international flight pierced through the darkness, heading across the ocean. In the first-class cabin, Sun Yen turned her head to gaze out the window. Below, the city's brilliant lights stretched out like golden veins, the very place where she had loved Fu Qinzhou for a full 10 years. Then the lights gradually blurred, shrank, and were finally swallowed whole by thick clouds, leaving nothing outside the window but a boundless, icy darkness. She raised her hand and gently placed it over her lower abdomen. It was still flat, silent, and still. She closed her eyes, but no tears came. 3 years later, Strawberry TV's annual flagship family reality show, Baby Go, has taken the internet by storm with its live-streaming format, authentic interactions, and adorable kids. The latest episode's trailer just dropped and is already trending, thanks to the addition of a mysterious set of guests. As the show officially began, the livestream's viewership instantly skyrocketed to become the platform's top program of the year. The camera panned across several celebrity parents and their children before finally settling on an exceptionally striking mother-son pair who were not public figures. The mother, wearing a simple cream-colored knit sweater and jeans, had a gentle and pristine aura. She was tenderly adjusting the collar of the little boy beside her. Even in profile, her appearance caused the live chat to fall silent for a moment before exploding into a frenzy. Holy crap, is she a new star? She's absolutely stunning. 3 minutes, I need all the info on this girl. Wait, she looks kinda familiar. Immediately, all cameras and gazes were involuntarily drawn to the little boy beside her, a little boy of about 3, dressed in denim overalls and a shirt, with slightly curly hair and milky white skin, looked every bit the dapper little gentleman. He wasn't the least bit shy, his large, obsidian black eyes, clear as glass, wide with curiosity as he took in all the equipment and crew around him. Those eyes, they were unmistakable. The camera zoomed in, capturing a perfect close-up of the little boy. The barrage paused eerily for a few seconds before going completely wild. Am I seeing things? This kid's eyes. How are they identical to that king of hell from the Fu Corporation, Fu Qinzhou? Holy crap, it really is. It's like a carbon copy. No way, is President Fu married? I never heard that. And wasn't there a rumor his white moonlight came back? Who is this woman? What's her connection to President Fu? An illegitimate child. Watch your mouth, you in the front. We're waiting for an explanation. At the live broadcast, the host, clearly having noticed this explosive focal point, crouched down with practiced ease and a smile, holding the microphone to the little boy's mouth. And what's your name, sweetheart? The little boy wasn't shy at all. He spoke clearly, his voice sweet and childish yet carrying a surprising steadiness. My name is Su Yuan, my nickname is Anan. You're amazing, Anan. The host's heart melted at the cuteness. She playfully asked, you're so handsome, Anan. Who do you look more like, your dad or your mom? Little Su Yuan tilted his head thoughtfully upon hearing this, then, blinking his big eyes, which were the spitting image of a certain business tycoon's, he answered in a clear, crisp voice. Mom says it's fine if I just look like her. Because Dad, he paused, as if trying to recall his mother's exact words, Dad cried for the wrong person. The director on set, who was taking a sip of water, nearly choked and spat it out. The host's smile froze solid on their face. A deathly silence fell over the entire live stream control room and the screens of millions of viewers. The barrage of comments went completely blank for a full 3 seconds, then exploded across the entire screen. At a nuclear pace. Wait, he was crying for the wrong person. My brain just short-circuited from information overload. So President Fu mistook his first love, and then his wife ran away pregnant. Holy crap, this is the most dramatic soap opera of the year. That kid is absolutely Fu Qinzhou's, no doubt about it. Look at those eyes, that gaze. He's a mini version of the tyrant. Madam's words are absolutely brutal. A verbal kill shot, crying for the wrong person. Ha ha ha, does President Fu's face sting? Quick, someone tell Mr. Fu, his son is on TV calling someone else dad. Just kidding. The top floor of the Fu Corporation, the CEO's office. Beyond the massive floor-to-ceiling windows lay a bustling cityscape, yet the atmosphere inside was oppressively tense. Assistant Feng Jing's hand trembled so violently he could barely hold his phone. Holding his breath, he shoved open the heavy solid wood door. Mr. Fu, the man behind the desk, was reviewing documents, and at the sound, he frowned with displeasure. The harsh line of his profile, cast in shadow and light, seemed even more cold and unfeeling. The moment his deep-set eyes lifted, they held their usual air of unquestionable authority. Get out, Mr. Fu, you have to see this. Feng Jing practically lunged forward, presenting the trembling screen of a live-streaming phone to him. Fu Qinzhou's gaze swept impatiently across the screen, then, it froze on the screen. The little boy was facing the camera, blinking those eyes. It was the spitting image of the childhood photo in his study. The little boy's voice, crisp and clear, pierced through the static and struck his eardrum. You're crying for the wrong person, Dad. Boom. It felt like something had just exploded inside his mind. The icy divorce uttered in the hospital room 3 years ago, the quietly returned and signed agreement from 3 years ago, the sent-back ring, and that piece of paper he overlooked, folded and tucked beneath the ring. What did he say back then? He sneered coldly at the person his mother had sent to deliver the items. What game is she playing now? He hadn't even bothered to open it and take a look. Bang! The mahogany desk was violently overturned, sending papers scattering across the floor. Fu Qinzhou's eyes instantly became bloodshot with fury. his chest heaving violently like a cornered beast pushed to its absolute limit, ready to tear everything apart in the next second. He snatched up his car keys and stormed out of the office like a hurricane of pure destruction. "Mr. Fu, the meeting," Fong Jing shouted, chasing after him. There was no response. The black Bugatti roared like a beast, running several red lights as it tore down the street. With a sharp, screeching halt, it lurched to a stop in front of the Strawberry TV building. Fu Qinzhou kicked the car door open, radiating a terrifying aura. Staff members scattered in fear as he passed. He shoved the security guard aside and charged straight toward the studio marked with the on-air sign. "Sir, you can't go in there. We're live, get out of my way." With a thunderous bang, the studio's heavy soundproof door was flung open, slamming against the wall and making the entire space shudder. The live broadcast signal shook violently. Every camera, every gaze, snapped toward the doorway in an instant, frozen in terror. Silhouetted against the light, the man's tall frame radiated a violent aura. Though dressed in a suit, his clothes were disheveled, and the frantic rise and fall of his chest betrayed his panic and loss of control. His face, usually cold, imposing, and impassive, was now a frightening pallor, etched with a look of near-manic urgency. A pair of bloodshot eyes swept across the scene like a scanner, before locking with a deathly focus on the woman seated in the center, clad in a cream-colored knit sweater. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. The live-stream chat was hit by the most insane barrage of comments since the broadcast began. "He's here, he's here, he's here, he's walking in on a wave of comments. Holy crap, a real life chasing your wife into a crematorium drama, live on stream." The look in President Fu's eyes. "I'm terrified he's going to eat someone alive right here, madam, run." All the crew members froze on the spot. Even the director forgot to yell cut. In the deathly silence, only the low hum of the running equipment could be heard. Startled by the sudden commotion, little Su Yuan instinctively burrowed deeper into his mother's embrace. Then, widening eyes that were the spitting image of the man at the door, he gazed with a mix of curiosity and shy apprehension at the uncle who looked terrifying yet strangely familiar. The little one blinked, as if trying hard to match something in his memory. Then, raising a chubby little arm, he pointed a dimpled finger at the man frozen in the doorway. "Fu Qinzhou." Turning his head, he asked Sun Yan, who was holding him, in a voice both innocent and piercingly cruel, loud enough for the entire livestream to hear. "Mommy, this uncle, he looks just like the daddy I was crying for." The air in the livestream room seemed to be sucked out in an instant, and all sound ceased abruptly. After a violent shake, the camera lens locked firmly on the tall yet disheveled figure in the doorway. Fu Qinzhou's chest heaved violently, his expensive suit jacket was slightly rumpled, his tie askew, and a few strands of black hair fell across his forehead, failing to hide the terrifyingly bloodshot eyes. He was like a caged beast, breaking free. All his composure, self-restraint, and aloofness shattered into a million pieces in that instant. His entire world narrowed down to the woman seated at the center of the frame, wearing a cream-colored knit sweater, a child cradled in her arms. Sun Yan. It was really her. 3 years, 4 months, and 17 days, that name, that person, which he thought had long sunk to the bottom of time's ocean or been deliberately buried by his own hand, had never truly left his blood and bones. It had merely lain dormant, waiting for a moment potent enough to tear everything asunder, to erupt from the earth and blast him to smithereens. His gaze devoured her image hungrily. She had grown thinner, but her complexion was good, having shed the cautious pallor of 3 years ago, replaced now by a quiet grace. She didn't even look at him, merely lowering her eyes slightly, gently patting the child's back in her arms, as if the earth-shattering childish words from moments before, and his own, Fu Qinzhou's, dramatic entrance, were nothing more than insignificant interludes. Yet the calmer she was, the more that world-ending panic in his chest surged wildly. "Sun Yan." His throat was parched and aching as he forced out the 2 words, his voice so hoarse it didn't sound like his own. The floor director finally snapped out of his stunned paralysis, beads of cold sweat forming as he fumbled to salvage the situation. Into the microphone, he stammered, Viewers, we're experiencing a minor technical hiccup. We'll cut the live feed now." Immediately, Fu Qinzhou whipped his head around, his gaze like a venom-tipped icicle scraping over every crew member on set. It was the command of a man long accustomed to absolute authority, unquestionable and laced with a violence teetering on the edge of control amidst the frantic howls of millions of viewers. "No, don't, let me see. Boss Fu is losing it." The live broadcast signal was abruptly severed. The screen plunged into instant darkness, but the storm inside the studio had only just begun. With the cameras off, Fu Qinzhou's last shred of restraint vanished. He strode forward, practically shoving his way past obstructing equipment and panicked staff. His target was singular: Sun Yan. Mr. Fu, the show's producer, tried to block his path, steeling himself. "Get out of my way." Without even a glance, he swung his arm, sending the man stumbling backward. He finally came to a halt before her, his tall frame cast a long shadow, enveloping both her and the child completely. Up close, he could see the faint tremor of her eyelashes more clearly, and the child in her arms, the child with eyes that mirrored his own, peeking at him with a mix of timidity and curiosity. The child's eyes were as pure as dark obsidian, reflecting back just how unhinged and frantic he appeared in that moment. His heart felt as if it were being crushed in the icy grip of a fist, a pain so sharp it stole his breath. "Sun Yan," he spoke again, his voice hoarse and laced with a tremor he hadn't even realized was there, carrying a note that bordered on pleading. "We need to talk." Sun Yan finally looked up, her gaze settled calmly on his face, devoid of hatred, resentment, or the turbulence of a long-awaited reunion, as if she were looking at a complete stranger. This calmness unsettled Fu Qinzhou more than any accusation or outburst ever could. "Mr. Fu," she began, her voice clear and cool, laced with detached politeness, "we're filming. It's inappropriate for you to barge in like this, Mr. Fu." She called him Mr. Fu once. She would blush and stubbornly, in a small voice, call him Qinzhou. A cold glance from him would make her falter and correct herself, the light in her eyes dimming slightly. Later, as his rightful Mrs. Fu, she called him Sir, respectful yet distant, with a moth-to-flame kind of humility. And now, it was the utterly definitive Mr. Fu, drawing a clear line between them. A coppery, metallic taste of blood surged up in Fu Qinzhou's throat. He stared at her, his gaze so intense it felt like it could bore 2 holes through her face. "What kind of nonsense is that? What he said, what did he mean?" He pointed a trembling finger at the child in her arms. Sun Yan gently pressed the child's face against her shoulder, shielding him from Fu Qinzhou's terrifying expression. Her tone remained flat. "You're taking a child's babbling seriously, President Fu." "Babbling?" Fu Qinzhou let out a bitter, incredulous laugh. As if he'd heard the greatest joke, he took a sudden, menacing step closer, close enough to catch the faint, familiar yet strange scent of her hair, a scent that stung his eyes. "Sun Yan, look at me, tell me, is he my child?" He practically roared those final words, his voice echoing through the empty studio, ringing in everyone's ears. The entire crew held their breath, wishing they could vanish into thin air. Sun Yan finally frowned slightly, not because of his outburst, but because he had frightened the child, and then squirmed uneasily in her arms, tiny hands clutching tightly at her collar. "Mr. Fu, please calm down," she said, shielding the child and leaning back slightly to escape his overwhelming presence. "You're scaring him." "Did I scare him?" The bloodshot veins in Fu Qinzhou's eyes grew more pronounced, watching her instinctive move to shield the child, seeing the boy's complete and utter reliance on her. A sharp pain and an indescribable panic tore through him, almost ripping him apart. "Sun Yan, answer me, is he my son or not?" "No." Two crisp, decisive words, uttered without a hint of hesitation from her pale lips. Like an ice pick, they plunged straight into Fu Qinzhou's heart. He froze in place, the color draining completely from his face as he stared at her in disbelief. How could she deny it so easily? Those eyes, that face, it was almost a perfect miniature of his own. "You're lying," he rasped, his voice hoarse and broken. Sun Yan no longer looked at him, instead lowering her head to softly soothe the child. "Don't be afraid, Anan, Mom is here." That gentle demeanor was the cruelest blow to him. Fu Qinzhou abruptly raised his hand as if to grasp at something, only to let it fall limply. He scanned the room, taking in the averted gazes and the source of this entire situation, finally reclaiming a shred of his remaining composure. He couldn't stay any longer. He couldn't let them remain exposed under these prying eyes. He drew a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the tempest of emotions raging in his chest. With every ounce of his strength, he clung to the last shreds of his composure, even as it lay in tatters. "Fine," he nodded, each word seeming to be ground out from between his teeth. "Sun Yan, you're really something." He took 2 steps back, yet his gaze remained glued to her and the child, as if trying to sear their images into his memory with the intensity of his stare. "My apologies for the disturbance today." His voice was cold and hard as he spoke, addressing the empty air and the production crew alike. regarding today's incident, the legal department of Fu Corporation will be in touch." With that, he spun on his heel and strode away. His retreating figure remained ramrod straight, yet it carried an unmistakable air of flustered haste. Like a man in full retreat, the studio door swung shut heavily behind him with a dull thud. A dead silence descended once more. Sun Yan held the child, frozen in her original posture, only the faint tremor in her fingertips betrayed that she was not as composed as she appeared. Miss Su, Miss Su." The director wiped his sweat and cautiously approached. "What do you think about this? I'm afraid we'll have to pause today's recording." Sun Yan looked up, her face having regained its previous composure, even carrying a hint of apology. "I'm sorry for the trouble." Holding the child, she stood up, gave a slight nod, and then walked calmly towards the backstage lounge under a gaze of mixed emotions from the onlookers. As the door closed, it shut out all prying eyes. Sun Yan leaned against the door and slowly slid down to the floor. She held the bewildered Inan in her arms, clutching her tightly, as if the child were her only lifeline. Her shoulders began to tremble slightly. "Mama," Inan's small hand touched her face. "Don't cry, Mama, Inan will protect you." Sun Yan buried her face in the soft, small shoulder of her child, took a deep breath, and when she looked up again, her eyes were rimmed with red, but there were no more tears. She kissed her son's forehead, her voice hoarse yet resolute. "Mommy's not crying, don't be scared, Inan, Mommy will always protect you." Elsewhere, the black Bugatti roared back towards the Fu Corporation building like a wounded beast. Fu Qinzhou kicked the office door open with a crash, the tremendous noise reducing the secretaries outside to a terrified silence. "Feng Jing," he bellowed furiously. Feng Jing stumbled in, breathless and frantic. "Mr. Fu, investigate." Fu Qinzhou roared, sweeping the few remaining files off his desk. His chest heaved violently, eyes bloodshot. 3 years ago, the hospital, every single record, especially from the period right before she left, all of them. Don't let a single slip of paper be missed. The child's words, those eyes, and Sun Yan's "I see no" echoed relentlessly in his mind. It has to be her, that paper under the ring. Why didn't he look at it then? Why? And one more thing. He whirled around, his gaze fixed on Feng Jing with terrifying intensity. "That child, Su Yuan, I want to know everything about him, date of birth, hospital, his entire life story, now, immediately." "Yes, President Fu." Feng Jing's back was soaked with cold sweat. He didn't dare waste a single second as he rushed out. Fu Qinzhou paced back and forth in the chaotic office like a caged beast, each breath searing with agony. Yes, Lin Weiwei, waking from surgery. His mind was a fog. The first thing that crashed into his consciousness was the memory of the fierce argument with Lin Weiwei just before the accident, the argument about the truth of who had saved him all those years ago. It brought a tidal wave of shock and the sting of betrayal. Then his mother rushed over, tears streaming as she cried, "Qinzhou, you're finally awake. Weiwei stayed by your side for 3 days straight. We just managed to convince her to go home and rest." "What did he say then?" "He said, tell Sun Yan, divorce." Because he thought it was Lin Weiwei who had been tenderly watching over him all along. Because he had just discovered that the girl who pulled him from the fire years ago, the one he had cherished in his memory for so long, might not have been Lin Weiwei at all, and Lin Weiwei's evasiveness and tears felt like a silent admission of guilt. A tidal wave of betrayal and fury clouded his mind. He was desperate to break free from that deceived past, desperate to rid himself of Sun Yan, the woman he might have married out of nothing more than a sense of obligation for a life-saving favor. So he rushed headlong into divorce. So he didn't even give that haggard woman, who had kept vigil outside his hospital room, a chance to explain. He didn't bother to look at a single thing she left behind. "Daddy, you're crying for the wrong person." The child's words, innocent yet cruel, cut through his self-righteous world like the sharpest blade. If he had mourned the wrong person, if he had been chasing the wrong shadow from the very beginning, then Sun Yan. Fu Qinzhou halted abruptly and drove his fist into the icy, tempered glass wall. His knuckles swelled and bled instantly, yet he felt no pain. Only a boundless chill crept up from the soles of his feet, inch by inch, freezing the very blood in his veins. He remembered how, throughout their 3 years of marriage, she would always watch him quietly, her eyes holding an expectation he had never bothered to understand. He remembered the times she had mustered the courage to bring him homemade soup at the office, only for him to abandon her at a single call from Lin Weiwei. The light in her eyes snuffed out in an instant. He remembered the night before the accident, when she seemed to want to tell him something, her gaze startlingly bright, only to lower her head in dejection under his impatient stare. Had she known all along? Was she waiting all this time for him to find out. But what did he do? After he woke up, he dealt her the most devastating blow. Mr. Fu Fangjing returned, his face pale, a tablet trembling in his hand, his voice shaking. The hospital records, 3 years ago, just before Madame Miss Su left. She did indeed have an early pregnancy test at the same hospital, the day before your car accident, but the records show that the report, after she left, someone was instructed to destroy it, in your name. Also, here is some of the information we were able to find about the young master, the child, Su Yuan. He was born abroad, and the specific hospital is very well protected, but when you calculate back from his birth date, it matches perfectly. Each word felt like a sledgehammer, pounding mercilessly into Fu Qinzhou's heart. Destroy the report in his name. His vision went dark, and he nearly lost his balance. He grabbed the cold edge of the desk, his knuckles turning white from the force. Who would do such a thing in his name? His mother, or Lin Weiwei? He didn't even dare to think too deeply about how much more filth and scheming lay hidden behind this, unknown to him, and so, blinded, he pushed her away with his own hands, pushed away their child. 3 years. He was absent for 3 whole years. When she needed him most, he handed her divorce papers, with the instruction, tell her it's over. Fu Qinzhou slowly raised his head, his crimson eyes churning with overwhelming remorse and world-obliterating fury. He grabbed his coat and strode out. President Fu, where are you going? To find her. Fu Qinzhou's car tore through the city's night once more like a bolt of black lightning. His knuckles were white where they gripped the steering wheel, and the bruised wound on the back of his hand oozed a faint trace of blood, staining the expensive leather interior. Yet he felt no pain, only the suffocating sensation of an invisible hand clenching and twisting his heart. Destroy the pregnancy test report, in his name. Those 5 words crashed violently in his mind, pounding against his skull until it buzzed and nearly split open. Who was it? Was it his mother, with her perpetually dignified face that masked how she valued the Fu family's reputation above all else? Or was it Lin Weiwei, the woman who had thrown herself at his bedside when he awoke, weeping pitifully, professing her worry and devotion, only for a flicker of relief to flash in her eyes the moment he mentioned divorce? Or were they both involved? A wave of gut-wrenching nausea churned within him. He remembered 3 years ago, after signing the divorce papers, he had entrusted all the follow-up matters entirely to his mother and his chief private lawyer. What had his mother said at the time? Qinzhou, don't worry, I'll handle Sun Yan's side properly. She won't be able to cause any trouble. The Fu family won't treat her unfairly, but we also can't let her get any ideas she shouldn't have. A child, for the Fu family back then, for him who had just emerged from danger, was about to take over more of the family business, and had intricate interests tied to the Lin family, was indeed an unwelcome surprise. A wave of sheer panic and remorse, cold as ice water, crashed over him, chilling him to the bone and making his teeth chatter. He wrenched the steering wheel, tires screeching as the car narrowly missed the roadside guardrail. He couldn't bear to think about it, didn't dare to. How had she managed these past 3 years, alone, pregnant, in a foreign land? What must she have felt when she signed the divorce papers? And what was going through her mind when she left behind the pregnancy test results? He used to sneer at her, calling her methods despicable, a schemer who'd stop at nothing to marry into the Fu family. But looking back now, who was truly the despicable, calculating one? The Bugatti finally came to a halt outside the hotel where the show's guests were staying. He didn't even wait for the car to stop completely before throwing the door open and rushing out. Sir, who are you looking for? The front desk clerk stood up, startled by his intimidating presence. Sun Yan, room number. His voice was hoarse, as if scraped by sandpaper, and the frantic urgency in his eyes was too intense to meet. I am sorry, we can't disclose guest information. Fu Qinzhou, he announced his name, each syllable weighted with authority. Now, immediately, give me the room number. The title of president of the Fu Group carried absolute weight in this city. The receptionist paled, fingers trembling as she searched the computer, quickly reciting a room number. The few seconds the elevator took to ascend stretched into an eternity. Fu Qinzhou stared at the flickering red numbers, his breathing ragged, his mind in turmoil. What should he say to her first? An apology, a confession, or should he demand to know why she hid it from him, why she gave up so easily? No, what right did he have to demand anything? With a soft ding, the elevator doors slid open. The corridor was carpeted thickly, muffling all sound, leaving only the heavy drumming of his own heartbeat in his ears. He found the room, stood outside the door, raised his hand, but it hovered there, refusing to fall. Apprehension grows upon nearing home. He was afraid to see her eyes, which had always held his reflection, now cold and strange. In the end, he still pressed the doorbell once, twice. There was no response from inside. His heart sank little by little. She didn't want to see him. Had she hidden away with the child, just like 3 years ago? Panic seized him instantly. He began pounding on the door. Sun Yen, open the door. I know you're in there. Let's talk. Sun Yen, a faint sound of footsteps finally came from inside the door. His heart clenched, and his hand, poised to knock again, froze in midair. The lock clicked softly, and the door opened a crack. Standing behind it was not Sun Yen, but a stern-looking middle-aged woman in a smart suit. Her gaze held a scrutinizing, protective air that brooked no intrusion. Mr. Fu, the woman said, her voice utterly calm and flat. Miss Su and the young master have retired for the evening. They are not receiving visitors. Fu Chenzhou recognized her. She was a partner at one of the country's top law firms, known for her tough tactics and staunch protection of client confidentiality. Sun Yen actually hired her. Step aside, I need to see Sun Yen. Fu Chenzhou's tone was icy, an attempt to intimidate with sheer presence. The female lawyer didn't budge an inch. Instead, she narrowed the door gap further. Mr. Fu, your current actions constitute harassment. My client has no desire to speak with you. If you persist, I will not hesitate to pursue legal action to protect my client's rights. Legal action? Fu Chenzhou almost let out a cold laugh. Talking law with him? The Fu family retained the best legal team in the entire city. Legal action? He stared at the crack in the door, trying to catch the slightest glimpse inside. Perfect timing. Let's discuss child custody. My son will not be left to drift without a home. This was the only reason he could think of at this moment to hold on to her. Despicable as it was, he had no other choice. A moment of silence fell from behind the door. Then, a cold, clear voice came through the crack in the door, cutting through Fu Chenzhou's heart even more sharply than the female lawyer's words. How would you like to proceed, President Fu? It was Sun Yen. She seemed to be standing right behind the door. Her voice held no trace of joy or anger, only an endless weariness and detachment. Talk through the door. Or would you prefer to wait for my lawyer's letter? All the forced toughness Fu Chenzhou had mustered crumbled instantly before her words. His throat tightened, and it took him a long moment to force out the words. Nian, let me see you. Let me see the child. That subconscious, long unheard Nian plunged both sides of the door into a brief, deathly silence. After a long pause, Sun Yan's voice sounded again, laced with a faint trace of mockery. President Fu, are we that familiar? Fu Chenzhou staggered back half a step as if struck in the face, his complexion turning deathly pale. 3 years ago, when we signed the divorce papers, didn't you say, Mr. Fu, that you hoped I would never appear before you again, lest I taint the sight of you and Miss Lin? Her voice was unnervingly calm, as if narrating someone else's story. I kept my word. Now, I ask that you, Mr. Fu, show some mercy and stay out of our lives, mine and our sons. No, that's not how it was. Nian. Please, let me explain. He reached out a futile hand, only to meet the cold, unyielding surface of the door. Explain what? Sun Yan's voice finally held a faint tremor, like an undercurrent beneath solid ice. Explain how your first act upon waking was to rush into a divorce. Explain the prenatal checkup report you threw away without a glance. Or perhaps explain how you instructed the hospital to destroy the records, wishing that my child and I had never existed at all. Each word felt like a red-hot dagger, plunging deep into Fu Chenzhou's heart and twisting. Cruelly, he opened his mouth to speak, only to find all his explanations pitifully feeble and laughable in the face of such a brutal truth. Wasn't that exactly what he had done back then? It wasn't me. Destroying the records. It wasn't me. He protested futilely, his voice breaking. Does it even matter who it is anymore? Sun Yen cut him off, her voice thick with weariness. Mr. Fu, you signed the divorce papers. I signed them. Legally, we've been nothing to each other for a long time, and An is my son. He's mine alone. Please leave. Sun Yen. He slammed his hand against the door, a desperate, low roar. That's my son. What right do you have to strip me of my rights as a father? Rights? Sun Yen from behind the door seemed to let out a soft laugh, a sound more painful than any sob. Fu Chenzhou, when you were on the operating table fighting for your life, who was the one waiting outside? When you woke up and decided my fate with a single sentence, who was the one who had to bear it? Alone, when I was so nauseous I couldn't eat a thing during my pregnancy, who was the one suffering through it alone in a foreign apartment, when I went for checkups and saw every other woman with her husband by her side, who was the one signing the forms alone, when Anan had a fever in the middle of the night and I had to rush him to the ER, where were you? Where were your precious rights then? Her words weren't rushed, nor did they carry any particular vehemence, they were simply stated. Matter of fact, yet each syllable was a drop of blood, hammering into Fu Qinzhou's heart, battering it until it was raw and unrecognizable. His hand fell away from the door, powerless, his tall frame slumped slightly, as if buckling under the immense weight. I'm sorry, Nian Nian, I'm sorry. Beyond those 3 words, he found he could say nothing else. Your apology is noted. Sun Yan's voice turned icy once more. Now, would you please leave, Mr. Fu, preserve what little dignity you have left. With that, and without waiting for his response, the door was gently closed from the inside. A soft click sounded as the deadbolt slid home. It was like an invisible barrier, shutting him out completely. Fu Qinzhou stood frozen in place, a discarded statue, staring at the firmly shut door as if he could see through the thick wood to the resolute woman inside and the child in her arms, the child who shared his blood, so close, yet so far away. Dignity. For the first time in his life, Fu Qinzhou felt utterly wretched, utterly contemptible. Utterly deserving of it all. He slowly turned around, leaned his back against the cold door panel, and slid down to sit on the carpet. The night wind blowing in from the window at the end of the corridor was bone-chillingly cold. Inside the room, Sun Yan leaned against the door, her body trembling slightly. The female lawyer looked at her with concern. Ms. Su, are you all right? Sun Yan shook her head, took a deep breath, and forced back the telltale moisture in her eyes. I'm fine, thank you. Attorney Zhang, for coming all this way so late. Of course. Attorney Zhang's gaze fell on her pale face, and her tone softened a little. I'll handle Fu Qinzhou, don't worry. He wouldn't dare to force the issue. He has no claim to the child's custody, not emotionally, not logically, and certainly not legally. I know. Sun Yan nodded. The reason she dared to come back, dared to go on the show, was because she had made thorough preparations long ago. The Sun Yan of today was no longer the one from 3 years ago, the one who had nothing and could only passively endure. Mommy, a little head peeked out from the bedroom door, and then rubbed his sleepy eyes, clearly awakened by the earlier commotion. Are there bad guys? Sun Yan immediately walked over, crouched down, and pulled her son's soft little body into her arms. No bad guys, sweetie, Mommy was just talking with the lawyer. Did we wake you up? And then shook his head, clinging to her neck and pressing his little face against her cheek. He whispered, Mommy, that mean-looking uncle today, is he my daddy? Sun Yan's heart gave a painful squeeze. The child was far more perceptive than she had imagined. Carrying her son to the bed, she gently patted his back. Instead of answering directly, she asked softly, does Anan want a daddy? Anan was quiet in her arms for a moment before whispering, all the kids at kindergarten have daddies. But, he looked up, his dark, grape-like eyes fixed on Sun Yan. If daddy makes mommy sad, then Anan doesn't want a daddy. Anan has mommy, and that's enough. At that moment, Sun Yan's tears finally spilled over. Unable to be held back any longer, she held her son tightly, her voice choked with emotion. Silly child, mommy has Anan, and that's enough. Outside the window, the night was as thick and dark as ink. Just beyond the door, Fu Qinzhou remained slumped on the cold carpet, his gaze fixed on the desolate hallway. His eyes held a boundless wasteland of regret and remorse. On the other side of the door, Sun Yan held her son, who had finally fallen asleep again. Her fingertips gently traced the child's features, so strikingly similar to that man's. As she lay awake through the night, the war had only just begun, and he had already lost the first, and most precious, battleground. The hotel corridor's carpet was too effective at absorbing sound, so effective that Fu Qinzhou could hear with painful clarity the roar of his own blood rushing in his ears, and the dull, heavy thud of his heart slamming against his ribs only to fall back, spent and powerless. A chill seeped up from the marble floor beneath him, which he had mistaken for carpet, creeping through the fine fabric of his expensive suit trousers, yet that cold was nothing compared to the desolate, frozen wasteland spreading through his chest. He just sat there, slumped against Sun Yan's firmly shut door, like a cornered beast stripped of its fangs and claws. All his ferocity and domineering will had shattered into irreparable pieces against the woman's absolute calm and detachment on the other side. Dignity. She told him to save some face for himself. Fu Qinzhou let out a low, raspy laugh, the sound broken and frail. It echoed faintly down the empty corridor, carrying a profound sense of desolation. After all these years dominating the business world, when had he, Fu Qinzhou, ever needed anyone to teach him about dignity? And when had he ever, so utterly abandoned it? But what did dignity matter now, if he could just earn a single glance from her, or hear his child call him dad once more? He would gladly trample all his dignity and pride underfoot. It wasn't my doing, he repeated futilely to the cold, unyielding door, knowing she couldn't hear him, or perhaps, even if she could, she wouldn't believe him. Nian Nian, it really wasn't me. The only response was the wind, seeping in through the window at the corridor's end, making the silence feel even deeper. After an unknowable length of time, his phone began to vibrate stubbornly in his pocket, the screen flashing with the word mother. Fu Qinzhou stared at those two characters. The turbulent crimson in his eyes was gradually replaced by a cold, almost savage gloom. He rose slowly to his feet, his legs numb from sitting too long, causing his body to sway slightly. He didn't answer the call, nor did he glance at the door again. He merely straightened his slightly rumpled suit jacket, a futile gesture, given the wound on his knuckles and his overall disheveled state. Then, he turned and walked toward the elevator. Every step felt like walking on broken glass, a sharp, painful reminder of what had just happened and the even uglier truth that might lie beneath it. The black Bugatti merged back into the traffic, its speed now steady and controlled, yet the man behind the wheel wore a terrifyingly calm expression, his dark eyes fathomless, like the dead calm sea before a storm. The Fu family mansion was ablaze with light, yet it exuded an old, oppressive gloom. Madame Fu was seated on the living room sofa, holding a bone china cup as she leisurely sipped her ginseng tea. Seeing Fu Qinzhou enter, she set the cup down. Her well-maintained face wore a look of perfectly measured concern, tinged with a hint of barely perceptible tension. "Qinzhou, where have you been so late? You didn't answer my calls. I heard this afternoon, mother." Fu Qinzhou cut her off, his voice unnervingly calm, causing Mrs. Fu's heart to inexplicably tighten. He rarely addressed her in that tone. He sat down on the sofa opposite her, leaning forward slightly, elbows on his knees, fingers interlaced. His gaze settled heavily on her face. 3 years ago, after I woke up from surgery, what else did Sun Yan leave behind, besides the divorce papers and the ring? Mrs. Fu's smile froze for an instant before she picked up a napkin and dabbed her lips, as if nothing were amiss. What else could there be? Just those things. At least she knew her place and didn't ask the Fu family for anything more. A prenatal report. Fu Qinzhou's voice remained calm, yet carried an undeniable certainty. 6 weeks pregnant. She left it under the ring. Mother, you saw it, didn't you? Madame Fu's face paled slightly, her eyes darting evasively. "Qinzhou, who told you this? It's been so many years." "That child, Sun Yan. Perhaps she was trying to use a baby to keep you back then. But whether that child was even a Fu is debatable." She smash. Fu Qinzhou violently swept a crystal ashtray off the coffee table. It shattered with a piercing crack, the flying fragments nearly hitting Madame Fu. She flinched violently, staring at her son in horror. Fu Qinzhou slowly rose to his feet, looking down at her from his superior height. In those eyes that so resembled hers, there was now not a trace of warmth, only a terrifying chill and oppressive force. "I'll ask one last time," he said, enunciating each word as if it had been dredged from an ice cellar. "Where is that prenatal report? Who ordered the hospital to destroy the records?" Madame Fu was terrified by his horrifying demeanor, which she had never seen before. Her lips trembled as she instinctively defended herself. It wasn't me. It was Wei Wei who said at the time. She said you didn't want a child, especially not one with Sun Yan. She said keeping that report would only upset you more. She was doing it for your own good, for the Fu family's good. That's why I had lawyer Wang handle it." Lin Weiwei. It was her after all. Fu Qinzhou closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were a bloodthirsty crimson. For his own good, for the Fu family's good. What a fine way of being for his own good. What a fine way of being for the family's good. He almost lost his own child forever. He almost missed the chance to learn the truth for good. Attorney Wang. Fu Qinzhou spat out the name and turned to leave. "Qinzhou, where are you going?" Mrs. Fu stood up in a panic. "For the sake of Sun Yan, for a child of dubious origin, are you going to throw this whole family into chaos? What about Wei Wei?" Fu Qinzhou halted his steps, without turning back. His voice was ice cold. "Mother, the child you call of dubious origin has eyes exactly like mine when I was a boy. He is a Fu. He is my son." As for Lin Weiwei, he let out a cold, mocking laugh, dripping with endless scorn and malice. you'd better pray she simply made a well-intentioned mistake. The black Bugatti roared out of the Fu family estate once more, heading straight for the apartment of Mr. Wang, the Fu Group's chief legal counsel. This time, he didn't even bother to knock, using a spare access card to swipe the apartment door open. Lawyer Wang, still in his bathrobe, turned pale as a ghost when he saw Fu Qinzhou storm in like an avenging fury. Mr. Fu, 3 years ago, the hospital's prenatal exam records were destroyed. Who gave you the order? Fu Qinzhou cut straight to the heart of the matter, without any preamble. Cold sweat instantly broke out on Lawyer Wang's brow, his eyes darting away. It was the old madam. I want the exact words. Fu Qinzhou lunged forward, grabbing the man by his collar and nearly lifting him off the ground. Was it Madame Fu, or Lin Weiwei? Talk. Paralyzed with terror by the murderous intent in his eyes, Attorney Wang dared not conceal anything further. He stammered, It was Miss Lin. She came to me with the old madam's seal and a power of attorney. She said it was your wish, that you wanted no loose ends left behind, and that I must handle it thoroughly. A power of attorney. Fu Qinzhou's fingers tightened, his knuckles turning white. How did Lin Weiwei get her hands on Madame Fu's personal seal? That, I don't know, Attorney Wang gasped, nearly suffocating. President Fu, have mercy. Fu Qinzhou abruptly released his grip. Attorney Wang collapsed to the floor, gulping down ragged breaths. Write down everything you know, exactly as it happened. And sign it. Fu Qinzhou tossed out the words, his gaze as cold as if he were looking at a corpse. Otherwise, you know what will happen. Meanwhile, in a penthouse apartment on the other side of the city, Lin Weiwei was doing her nightly skincare routine. Her phone screen was lit up, displaying screenshots of today's live-streaming scandal from various hot searches and chat groups. As she looked at the image of Fu Qinzhou's frantic intrusion into the broadcast and the discussions about the illegitimate child and crying for the wrong person, a twisted, spiteful smile curled at the corner of her lips. That bitch Sun Yan actually had Qinzhou's child, and she's back. So what if she's back? If I could drive her away 3 years ago, I can do it again now. As she was contemplating her next move to pressure Fu Qinzhou through his mother, her phone suddenly rang with a sharp, jarring tone, an unfamiliar international number. She answered impatiently, hello, who is this? On the other end of the line was a processed, chillingly unnatural electronic voice. Miss Lin, did you enjoy the surveillance footage from the night of Mr. Fu's accident, the one from the scrapyard in the west of the city, 3 years ago? The color drained from Lin Weiwei's face in an instant, her hand trembled, nearly dropping her phone. Who are you? I don't understand what you're talking about. The electronic voice let out a low, grating laugh, like the sound of rusted gears grinding. Don't understand. Shall I remind you how you bribed the night watchman to delete the clips showing you near the accident scene? Oh, and that scratch on your car, the one with paint that perfectly matches the fragments found at Mr. Fu's crash site. Shut up, you're talking nonsense, Lin Weiwei shrieked, her entire body trembling. What do you want? Money. I'll give it to you. Any amount. Money. The electronic voice scoffed. I'm just a spectator. By the way, a little reminder for Miss Lin. Mr. Fu seems to have started looking into what happened 3 years ago. You'd better watch your step. The call was abruptly disconnected, as if all her strength had been drained. Lin Weiwei slumped before the vanity, staring at her own ghostly pale face in the mirror. A wave of immense terror, cold as an icy tide, instantly engulfed her. He knows. How could he possibly know? Impossible. It's Sun Yan. That bitch must be behind this. Yes. If only Sun Yan would disappear. If she and that little bastard were gone for good, Qinzhou would never find out. The position of the Fu family's young mistress can only be hers. Insane thoughts coiled around her heart like poisonous vines. She snatched up her phone, her fingers trembling as she scrolled for a secret number, a desperate, scorched earth madness flashing in her eyes. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Fu Qinzhou sat in his car, reviewing the latest investigative update from Fangjing. It detailed the missing surveillance footage from several suspicious road sections on the night of the car accident 3 years ago, along with a newly received encrypted email from an anonymous overseas IP. The email contained several restored, grainy yet utterly damning surveillance clips. His fingers slowly clenched, his nails nearly digging into his palms. So, from the very beginning, it had all been a mistake, a colossal mistake, meticulously woven and built upon a foundation of lies. He picked up his phone and dialed Sun Yan's number, a sequence he had long since memorized by heart, yet had never dared to call. This time, it wasn't a busy signal, but the drawn-out, waiting tone of a ringing line, each ring hammered against his frayed nerves just as he thought she still wouldn't answer, and his heart began to sink. The call connected. There was no voice on the other end, only the faint sound of breathing, carried clearly through the line to his ear. Fu Qinzhou's throat bobbed violently, 1,000 words choked in his chest, finally condensing into 3 hoarse, broken syllables. "I'm sorry." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, then Sun Yan's cool voice came through, carrying a trace of barely perceptible weariness and a kind of almost cruel calm. "Fu Qinzhou, it's too late." The breathing on the other end of the line hitched slightly, followed by an even longer silence. Fu Qinzhou could almost picture her expression at that moment, her brows slightly furrowed, her lips pressed together tightly. The eyes that usually held a glimmer of light now likely contained nothing but exhaustion and a hint of undetectable mockery. "It's too late." Those 3 words choked him more than any sharp accusation. They felt like a verdict, nailing all his remorse and attempts at making amends to that cold decision he made 3 years ago. "It's not too late," he retorted almost instinctively, his voice gravelly with emotion. "Nian Nian, give me a chance, let me, Mr. Fu." Sun Yan cut him off, her tone devoid of any feeling, carrying only a detached, businesslike formality. "If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Anan is awake and needs me." "Wait." Fu Qinzhou's voice was urgent, terrified she might sever this last thread of connection. "The child, Anan, is he all right?" As he asked the question, his heart felt constricted, as if bound by a thin wire, aching with a sour, painful tightness. His son, his 3-year-old son, he didn't even know what the boy liked, what he disliked, or if he kicked off his blankets at night. A faint rustling sound came from the other end of the line, as if Sun Yan was gently patting the child. Her voice softened instinctively, carrying that uniquely maternal warmth. "He's fine." Those 3 simple words pierced Fu Qinzhou's heart like a needle, striking its most vulnerable spot with precision. He greedily clung to the faint trace of her and the child's presence, carried to him through the electric current. That's good," he murmured, suddenly at a loss for words. 1,000 thoughts choked in his throat, yet he feared that a single wrong word would cause her to slam shut the door she had just barely cracked open. "Fu Qinzhou," Sun Yan's voice regained its clarity and calm, "I hope this is the last time you call so late at night. Between us, aside from the legally mandated visitation rights, if we ever need to discuss that in the future, there is nothing else left to communicate." Legally mandated visitation rights. She had already relegated him to such a cold and distant place. Fu Qinzhou's fingers gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. The wound on the back of his hand split open again, and beads of blood smeared across the cold phone case. "I know anything I say now will sound like an excuse." He took a deep breath, struggling to keep his voice from sounding unhinged. "But I have to tell you, what happened 3 years ago, including the destruction of the prenatal report, was not my doing. I'm already investigating, and I'll give you an answer soon." There was a silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds, then Sun Yan let out a soft, bitter laugh, a sound filled with infinite desolation. "An answer, Fu Qinzhou? Do you really think I need any answer from you now? Who did those things doesn't matter to me anymore. What matters is the outcome. The outcome is that when I needed you most, you pushed me away and denied Anan's very existence. I didn't know. Back then, he tried to explain the chaos and misunderstanding of that time. "You don't know." Sun Yan's voice rose a fraction, the forced calm finally cracking to reveal the deep-seated pain and fury beneath. "Then why wouldn't you even look? Just one glance. Fu Qinzhou, you never believed me, not once. In your heart, I, Sun Yan, am just a woman who would stop at nothing to cling to the Fu family, even using a child to tie you down. Isn't that right?" No, his denial was feeble, because deep down, he knew it was true. 3 years ago, and throughout their 3-year marriage, he had subconsciously viewed her through that very lens. Her affection, her sacrifices, in his eyes, they were all tainted with a layer of utilitarian dust. Whether it is or isn't, it's all in the past. Sun Yan seemed drained, her voice sinking low again. "President Fu, let's both move forward. You have your Lin Weiwei, I have my Anan. The best ending is for us to leave each other alone." "Lin Weiwei and I ended long ago," Fu Qinzhou blurted out urgently, as if he could tear his heart out to show her. "It never truly began, in my heart, Fu Qinzhou." Sun Yan interrupted him again, her voice laced with a weariness that bordered on cruelty. "Who you hold in your heart truly has nothing to do with me anymore. I'm tired, I need to rest. Goodbye, Nian Nian." Beep, 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 the dial tone sounded, cold and final. Fu Qinzhou remained frozen in the car, the phone still pressed to his ear. The city's neon lights flickered through the window, casting shifting patterns across his face, yet they could not penetrate the profound despair in his eyes. She wanted neither his explanations, nor his remorse, not even him as a person. All she wanted was for him to vanish. The following days passed with an eerie, unsettling calm. Fu Qinzhou stopped trying to harass her at the hotel and ceased all phone calls. Instead, he mobilized every resource at his disposal, obsessively investigating every detail from 3 years ago. The suspicious circumstances of the car accident, Lin Weiwei's dubious movements, his mother's role in it all, every questionable document handled by lawyer Wang, piece by piece, thread by thread, he meticulously unraveled it all. The deeper he dug, the heavier the chill in his heart grew. The hidden schemes and ruthless tactics of Lin Weiwei, the woman he once believed to be innocent, fragile, and in need of protection, sent a shiver down his spine. But the profound sorrow came from his mother's silent complicity, even encouragement, all for the sake of family interests. Seated behind his massive desk, he reviewed the latest investigative report delivered by Fang Jing, along with the clearer chain of evidence from the mysterious overseas email. It was sufficient to prove that Lin Weiwei was not only suspected of fabricating evidence and deception regarding the identity of her savior, but might also be inextricably linked to that accidental car crash. At the end of the email was a single line: "Mr. Fu, I hope you like this gift. It was nothing, no thanks necessary." Fu Qinzhou stared at those words, his gaze dark and profound. Who was this person lurking in the shadows? Why were they helping him? And what was their ultimate goal? But he had no time to delve deeper at the moment. He compiled all the evidence and copied it onto an encrypted USB drive. Then, he picked up his coat and headed out the door once more. This time, his destination was Lin Weiwei's apartment. Some scores were due to be settled. A fleeting sense of peace seemed to have returned to Su Nian's life. The show's recording was suspended due to the previous incident. The production team is still locked in a dispute with the Fu Corporation's legal department. With no immediate plans to proceed, she was enjoying the unexpected break, spending her days accompanying Inan at the children's playground near the hotel or taking him to museums and libraries. She tried to avoid going out to escape unnecessary attention, but the impact of that day's livestream was too great. Occasionally, she would still be recognized, drawing whispers and curious stares. She took it all in stride, simply holding Inan a little closer. Lawyer Zhang called her daily to update her on Fu Qinzhou's movements and the interactions with the Fu Corporation's legal team. "It seems Fu Qinzhou is genuinely investigating what happened 3 years ago," Lawyer Zhang said over the phone, his tone complex. "Some of the evidence he's provided is quite favorable for you, especially regarding the illegal destruction of the prenatal checkup report. If it can be proven that Lin Weiwei did it under his name, or even that Mrs. Fu was aware, he would have almost no chance of winning a custody or visitation rights case." Sun Yan held the phone, watching Inan building a sandcastle not far away, and asked softly, "He wants visitation rights." The stance from the Fu Group's legal department is currently very vague, only emphasizing Mr. Fu's rights as the biological father, but I suspect Fu Qinzhou's goal goes far beyond just visitation rights. Lawyer Zhang paused. "Miss Su, you need to brace yourself. He may be aiming for full custody." Sun Yan's heart sank like a stone. She had anticipated this, but hearing a professional's assessment still filled her with pressure. The power and wealth of the Fu family were beyond anything she could match. If Fu Qinzhou was determined to take the child, "I won't give in to anyone." Her voice was soft, yet carried an unshakable resolve. "I understand, we'll do everything we can," Lawyer Zhang assured her. After hanging up the phone, Sun Yan walked over and sat down beside Inan. "Mommy, look, a castle," Inan exclaimed excitedly, pointing at her masterpiece, her little face smudged with fine sand. "So beautiful." Sun Yan smiled as she wiped the sand from his face, but her heart felt as heavy as a boulder. The sun was bright, the child's smile was sweet, yet the shadow had never truly left. Just then, her phone buzzed again, a text message from an unknown number. "Ms. Su, I have crucial evidence regarding the truth behind President Fu's car accident 3 years ago. Are you available to meet? You can choose the location." Sun Yan stared at the text message, her brow slightly furrowed. The truth about the car accident. Instinctively, she thought of Fu Qinzhou's previous phone call. He said he was investigating. Who is this now? A trap? Or? She hesitated for a moment before replying. "You can send the evidence to my lawyer. The contact details are below." A A reply came quickly. The evidence is of a sensitive nature and cannot be transmitted electronically. It concerns you personally and must be delivered directly into your hands. Please rest assured, I mean you no harm. Sun Yan's heart inexplicably began to beat faster. It concerned her personally. Her mind drifted back to the car accident that had nearly claimed Fu Qinzhou's life, and to his resolute demand for a divorce after he awoke. Could it be that there was some hidden truth behind that crash, something she never knew? After a long moment of contemplation, she glanced at the dutiful bodyguard standing watch nearby, insisted upon by lawyer Zhang, then at An playing happily. Finally, she made her decision. Meet at Blue Bay Cafe downtown at 3 p.m. Sunlight streamed through the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows, casting warm pools of light on the pale wooden tables and chairs. The cafe was sparsely populated, with the soft strains of jazz music flowing through the air. Sun Yan chose a seat by the window at the very back, which offered a view of the entrance while remaining relatively secluded. The bodyguard sat at another table not far away, appearing casual but maintaining a state of constant vigilance. She ordered a lemonade, her fingers unconsciously tracing the cold surface of the glass, her gaze drifting to the door every so often. Everything related to Fu Qinzhou felt like a powerful vortex she instinctively wanted to avoid. Yet, the text message mentioning the truth about the car accident and its direct relevance to you was like a thorn lodged in her heart. That car accident 3 years ago changed everything. What if it wasn't an accident? But she didn't dare to dwell on it. The wind chime at the door gave a clear, crisp ring. Sun Yan looked up to see a woman in an off-white trench coat, wearing large sunglasses and a hat, walk in. The woman was tall and slender, her demeanor carrying an air of deliberate understatement that was nonetheless striking. She glanced around, her gaze quickly locking onto Sun Yan's direction, and walked straight over. Sun Yan's heart gave a slight, anxious flutter. The woman sat down opposite her and slowly removed her sunglasses. The face that appeared was one Sun Yan knew all too well, Lin Weiwei. But the Lin Weiwei before her now had long lost the meticulously crafted elegance and fragility of the past. Her face was pale, with heavy, dark circles under her eyes. Her gaze was a turbulent mix of panic, fear, and a kind of desperate, all-or-nothing madness. It's you. Sun Yan frowned, instinctively on guard. You sent the text. Who else? Lin Weiwei's lips twisted into a stiff, ugly smile. Who did you think it was? That cold-hearted bastard Fu Qinzhou, the man who now only wants me dead. Sun Yan didn't want to beat around the bush. She asked directly, you said you have evidence about the car accident. What is it? Lin Weiwei didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared fixedly at Sun Yan, her gaze as complex and venomous as poison. I really envy you, Sun Yan. No, I hate you. I hate you. Why you? Why were you the one to bear his child? Why would he go to such lengths to destroy me? All for your sake. Her emotions were running high, and her voice rose involuntarily, causing the nearby bodyguard to immediately look over with alertness. Sun Yan raised a hand, signaling the bodyguard to stay calm. Miss Lin, if you asked me here just to say these things, then we have nothing more to discuss. Sun Yan stood up, preparing to leave. She didn't want to listen to Lin Weiwei's grievances, much less get entangled in the mess between her and Fu Qinzhou. Wait, Lin Weiwei grabbed her wrist fiercely, her nails digging almost into the flesh, her eyes burning with urgency. Don't you want to know why he demanded a divorce the moment he woke up 3 years ago? Sun Yan's movements halted. She lowered her gaze to her captured wrist, her tone icy. It doesn't matter anymore. It does matter, Lin Weiwei shrieked, a strange light flickering in her eyes. Because back then, he thought it was me by his bedside, because he had just discovered I might not be the girl who saved him all those years ago. He was furious and humiliated, and he couldn't bear the thought that he might have found the wrong person, loved the wrong person all along, so he was desperate to get rid of you. Because marrying you in the first place was all because of that damned debt of gratitude. Sun Yan's body swayed almost imperceptibly, even though I had already suspected it. Hearing the brutal truth directly from Lin Weiwei's lips felt like a heavy, blunt blow to my chest, a deep, suffocating ache. Just as I thought. She tried to pull her hand back forcefully, but Lin Weiwei gripped it even tighter, as if clinging to her last lifeline. But Sun Yan, do you have any idea that the car crash was no accident? Sun Yan's head snapped up, her pupils contracting sharply. It's you, a voice, icy to the bone and seething with suppressed fury, exploded like thunder beside their table. Fu Qinzhou descended like an avenging demon, an aura of terrifying menace swirling around him. He seized Lin Weiwei's wrist with a crushing grip, the force so great it felt like he would shatter her bones. Ah! Lin Weiwei cried out in pain, forced to release Sun Yan. Fu Qinzhou yanked Sun Yan behind him, using his own body as a complete barrier between her and Lin Weiwei. He looked down with utter contempt at Lin Weiwei, whose face was contorted in pain and shock, his gaze murderously dark, bribing the night staff, tampering with the surveillance footage, even going so far as to orchestrate a car accident. Lin Weiwei, you have some nerve. Each word he uttered seemed dredged from an ice cellar, dripping with a bone-chilling coldness. Seeing him, Lin Weiwei looked as if she'd seen a ghost, all color drained from her face, and her body trembled like a leaf in an autumn gale. Qinzhou, no, listen to me, it wasn't me, it was Sun Yan, she framed me. Shut up. Fu Qinzhou slammed a silver flash drive onto the table with a sharp crack. The evidence on here is enough to put you away for life. Lin Weiwei stared at the flash drive as if it were a death warrant. Her last shred of hope shattered completely, her legs gave way, and she collapsed into the chair, her gaze vacant, muttering under her breath, it's over, it's all over. Fu Qinzhou turned away from her, his hands gripping Sun Yan's shoulders tightly as he looked her over. His voice was thick with lingering fear and urgency. Did she do anything to you? Are you alright? I shouldn't have let you come out alone. His touch was warm and firm, yet carried a faint tremor. Sun Yan could clearly smell his familiar, crisp scent, now mingled with the faint, dusty smell of someone who had been traveling. She looked up and met his deep gaze. A torrent of emotion swirled within, anger, regret, worry, and a dense, unfathomable pain she couldn't decipher. After a few days apart, he seemed to have lost weight, the line of his jaw was sharper, and his tired eyes were threaded with red. Sun Yan's heart felt as if it had been gently struck by something, a bittersweet ache too profound for words. She turned her head slightly away, avoiding his scorching gaze, and gently freed her hand from his. I'm fine. Fu Qinzhou's hand hung frozen in midair, a flicker of desolation passing through his eyes, only to be swiftly replaced by a more resolute emotion. He took a deep breath and carefully retrieved something from the inner pocket of his suit. It was a piece of paper. The edges were worn and yellowed, bearing the clear, sharp creases of having been folded and unfolded many times. At the top were the hospital's logo and the words Early Pregnancy Diagnosis Report. The date, shockingly, was from 3 years ago. Sun Yan's breath hitched in her throat as she stared blankly at the paper. I'm sorry. Fu Qinzhou's voice was hoarse with emotion. He cradled the crumpled paper in his hands as if it were a priceless treasure, yet also a searing coal. His gaze held a pain that was almost reverent. 3 years ago, I never saw it. His eyes were locked on Sun Yan, not missing a single flicker of expression on her face. I know sorry is far too little. I know how terribly wrong I was. I'm not asking for your forgiveness right now. Nian Nian, I'm only begging you for one chance. His Adam's apple bobbed violently, his voice thick with a desperate plea, a chance to make things right, a chance to get to know you again, to court you properly, to be a worthy father. The legal department of the Fu Group will cease all custody disputes effective immediately. I will sign an agreement, relinquishing all custody rights. If you wish, you can have complete control over visitation rights. I will never force anything on you again. For the past 3 years, and the 3 before that, I've failed you and our child. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Sun Yan, he looked at her, his eyes filled with an undisguised, profound love and remorse that had shattered and then painfully reformed. Give me a chance, please. The cafe was so quiet that only the soft background music remained. The sunlight fell upon Fu Qinzhou, illuminating the tears in his eyes and his cautious, pleading expression with perfect clarity. Sun Yan stared at the yellowed pregnancy test report, at the man who had always held himself so high and mighty, now reduced to utter humility before her, and at the agreement in his hand that relinquished everything. The despair and chill from 3 years ago still seemed to linger at her fingertips, yet the hard wall of ice in her heart quietly cracked, just a little, when she saw him cradling that pregnancy test she thought had long been discarded like trash, and saw the profound remorse in his eyes. She remained silent for a long time. The light in Fu Qinzhou's eyes dimmed bit by bit, and the hand holding the pregnancy test report trembled slightly just as he was on the verge of being swallowed by immense despair. A soft little hand gently tugged at the leg of his suit trousers. Fu Qinzhou looked down and had run over at some point, tilting her little head up. She blinked her eyes, identical to his, looking at him curiously, then at her mother, before asking in a milky voice with a touch of grown-up seriousness, Mommy, is this man my daddy? Fu Qinzhou's heart felt as if it had been Violently squeezed, then abruptly released. Aching and swollen until he could barely breathe, he crouched down, bringing his eyes level with the child's, his voice choked and broken. "Yes, I'm Daddy, I'm sorry," and then, Daddy came too late, and then tilted his little head, looked at him for a moment, then stretched out his small hand and gently touched the man's reddened eye corner, whispering, "Don't cry, Daddy, Mommy says if you know you're wrong and fix it, you're still a good boy." At that moment, Fu Chenzhou's tears finally spilled over. Completely, beyond his control, he pulled his son's soft little body tightly into his arms, as if holding a whole world he had lost and found again. Sun Yan watched the scene unfold. The man who had always been so stern and unyielding now held the child and wept like one himself. While their son gently patted his father's back, she turned her face away, quickly raising a hand to wipe the moisture that had inadvertently welled in the corner of her eye. After a long moment, she turned back, her voice soft yet clear as it reached Fu Chenzhou's ears. "It's time for Anan's nap." Fu Chenzhou stood up, holding the child, his eyes red as he looked at her with a mix of anxiety and hope. Sun Yan didn't look at him, she simply reached out her hand and said softly to Anan, "Anan, come to Mommy." Anan looked at his father, then at his mother, before obediently leaning over and returning to Sun Yan's embrace holding her son. Sun Yan turned and walked out of the cafe. After taking 2 steps, she paused. Without turning back, her voice remained soft, yet like a spring breeze, it instantly melted all the cold and frost in Fu Chenzhou's heart. "Fu Chenzhou, chasing after someone, you can't just stand there." Fu Chenzhou stood frozen in place for several long seconds before it finally dawned on him. An immense, indescribable joy instantly overwhelmed his every sense. He scrambled to grab the documents and USB drive from the desk, nearly tripping over the chair in his haste as he stumbled after her. "Nian Nian, wait for me." Sunlight streamed through the glass window, casting the long, trailing shadows of the 3 figures in the air. The cold, painful memories of the past seemed to be melting away. Bit by bit the cracks remain, and the ice has not fully thawed yet. Spring, it seems, is finally willing to grace this long barren land. Half a year later, at the Fu family's private estate, the lawn was meticulously trimmed into a soft, green carpet, ablaze with flowers, white gauze drapes and floral arches swayed gently in the breeze. The guests were few, all close family and friends, creating a warm and romantic atmosphere. Sun Yan stood at the end of the flower archway, dressed in a simple yet exquisitely crafted custom wedding gown, a veil lightly covering her. Sunlight fell upon her, casting a soft, radiant glow. Holding her bouquet, she tilted her head slightly, listening to the playful teasing of her friend beside her, a faint, blissful smile gracing her lips. At the other end of the red carpet, Fu Chenzhou stood tall in a sharply tailored black tuxedo. His gaze was fixed unwaveringly on the figure beneath the flower arch, his palms growing damp with nerves. Beside him stood Anan, also dressed in a little suit, looking particularly spirited today as he earnestly played the role of the ring bearer, his small face serious as he clutched the ring box. The melodious strains of the wedding march began to play. Sun Yan, arm in arm with an elder, walked step by step upon the scattered petals, moving toward the man she had loved for 10 years, hated for 3, and ultimately chosen to trust once more. Each step felt like walking through a tunnel of time. At one end lay the humble crush of her youth and the desperate gamble of her marriage, 3 years of cold neglect and a final, heartbroken departure. At this end was the trepidation and caution of something lost and found again, his clumsy yet wholehearted pursuit and attempts at atonement. It was the countless nights he spent cradling their sleepless son, telling stories, the back of his hand, reddened from learning to cook her favorite dishes, the look in his eyes whenever he gazed at her and their child, a look so full it threatened to spill over, brimming with a heavy, profound love and remorse. The path was not long, yet she felt as if she had walked half a lifetime. Fu Chenzhou watched her approach step by step, his eyes uncontrollably reddening. He reached out, his fingertips trembling slightly. Su Nian gently placed her hand into his palm, his warm, dry hand closed tightly around hers, the grip so firm it was as if he were holding a priceless treasure, one he would never let go of, not for all eternity. Before the priest, they exchanged vows. I do, their voices merged, resolute and devout as they exchanged rings. Anan stood on his tiptoes, his voice sweet and childish yet filled with utter sincerity. "Daddy," he said, "you must always be good to Mommy." The innocent words drew warm, gentle laughter from the guests, yet they also brought instant tears to the eyes of Sun Yan and Fu Chenzhou. Fu Chenzhou bent down to take the ring and solemnly placed it on Sun Yan's finger. Then, He swept his son into his arms, his voice choked with emotion yet crystal clear. "I promise you, son, I promise your mother, I swear it on my life." As the ceremony concluded, amidst the cheers and blessings of the crowd, Fu Chenzhou lowered his head and kissed his bride with a deep, profound kiss. The sun is shining bright, and the flowers are in full bloom. Those past mistakes, hurts,